I'm going to call tonight's regular meeting of the Planning Commission to order and ask that the clerk take roll.
Commissioner Bauer?
Here.
Chair Hooper?
Here.
Commissioner Kelly?
Here.
Commissioner McKeerlane?
Here.
Commissioner Rackison?
Here.
Commissioner Wisman?
Here.
We have a quorum.
Thank you very much. I am guessing that...
I apologize. And Vice Mayor Cater Thompson.
And I'm here.
Thank you very much. And I'm guessing many of you are here for item 2, which has to do with the plant downtown overlay. We are going to be slightly reordering tonight's agenda. There has been a request from our planning staff to have a continuance of the item until our August 8th meeting. So what we're going to do is hold a vote, have a motion, hold a vote to continue till the August 8th meeting. But what it does mean is for public comment, which is immediately to follow that, you can still get up and either via comment card, online, or right at the podium, make a public comment related to the item that you intended to speak on. So with that, let me just read item 2. Recommendation to the City of Petaluma Planning Commission and the Historic and Cultural Preservation Committee to conduct a planning study session to receive project information regarding revisions to a proposal to create a zoning overlay in downtown Petaluma. I believe did you want to make comment related to the requested continuance?
Sure, I'm happy to. Chair Hooper, thank you very much. Good evening, commissioners and members of the public. So staff are doing a bunch of work following from the community events that have occurred already in response to those and doing more analysis, addressing things like height and viewscape and options in relation to potential overlays. And are not prepared, given all that work, to bring that all forward to the commission and the public tonight. Hence the recommendation, and staff are bringing that in accordance with Section 703 in the Planning Commission's rules, which says the chairman may, with consent of the commission, alter order indicated on the agenda, which in this case would be to remove and continue that item to August 8th. So it could be done with a motion and a vote as you indicated, or it can be done at your recommendation with concurrence of the rest of the members. Up to you. Thank you.
Could I get a motion to move the item to August 8th?
I'll make that motion.
Second.
If we could have a roll call vote thank you.
Commissioner Bauer?
Yes.
Chair Hooper?
Yes.
Commissioner Kelly?
Yes.
Commissioner McKeerlane?
Yes.
Commissioner Rackison?
Yes.
Commissioner Wisman?
Yes.
And Vice Mayor Cater Thompson?
Yes.
All in favor?
Thank you very much. And with that, we will be closing the item since it's now been moved to August 8th. And we will move into general public comment. And just as a reminder, if you came here with the intention of commenting on the overlay, you may absolutely do so during general public comment. During general public comment, the public is invited to make comments on items of public interest that are within the Planning Commission's subject matter jurisdiction and that are not listed on the current agenda. Public comments are limited to up to 3 minutes per person, depending on the number of persons wishing to address the Planning Commission. Time will be allocated in equal shares, totaling no more than 15 minutes. I would like to ask anybody who's here who hasn't already to please fill out a speaker's card and bring it up to the front. I want to ask the clerk, have we had any comments prior to this meeting?
Yes, we received one comment prior, and it's been posted online and has been provided to you as well.
Thank you very much. We will start with Nancy. Sorry, we will start with Nancy. I did not want to butcher your last name. My apologies.
I was coming here hoping to hear the presentation, so I put a comment card in. I live on D Street. I think that Petaluma is known specifically for its historic district. That's why people come here. They don't come for the Round Table or the Target. They come here because of our downtown. And I think changing it by increasing the height is a very bad idea. I think you're going to ruin the whole feeling of it. It's a national historic site. We have 2 historic districts, the business and the housing A Street district, and I think we should not increase the height. We have plenty of empty space around the downtown area that can be filled in with higher stuff, but I do not believe that we should be ruining what makes Petaluma special. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Nancy. And our next commenter would be Anita Redford. Is that? No. Guess not. Is there a Nora Pearl here?
So I have gone to the meeting at the Women's Center on a couple Wednesdays ago and got to know a little bit more about this project. And my concern is I live maybe 4 blocks away from this event, and the idea of having a loud party, an entertainment place on the top floor is awful. I mean, we can hear what goes on at the fairgrounds, and to have something so close is not good planning. So there's so many things that I heard that night about not having dedicated parking, not having an alleyway behind it where people could drive through to pick up garbage or make food deliveries, or it just doesn't sound like it's even planned well. So it feels like there's a lot of problems, besides that people don't want a 6-story building in a historic district. I think it's an eyesore in terms of putting that kind of thing in this location. That's just my off-the-cuff comments. Thank you.
Thank you. And could we hear from Art Cooper?
Okay, my comments have to do with the overlay. And in the material available online with the overlay, there were a number of maps dealing with the study area. And in the last maps, there's a page that's labeled Opportunity Sites in Downtown Petaluma. And that has to do with parking. Okay? Now, if you were to look at that map on 4th Street and C Street, that's where the old bus station used to be, there's one lot that's designated other parking. That's my property. It's a residential unit. My wife and I have used that as a residential rental since 1991. And the idea of converting that property from a residential unit to parking, I think, in my opinion, is odious, especially considering the priority of the city to promote residential properties. So I'm a little bit disturbed by that, and I would like whoever it is that developed this map to eliminate that property from an opportunity. And I also recognize that the other properties in that area that are designated as opportunities are commercial properties, one of which was where the old Foster Freeze was. And there are ample opportunities in that area to develop parking, whether it be for the city or for the hotel. Okay? Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Art. And our next speaker is Judy.
Well, thank you very much for this opportunity to speak my mind. Why would we rezone our beautiful historic town so big business can come in and make big money, use up our water in a huge drought zone, increase the parking problem in the historic district? I live at F and 7th. Delightful, delightful town. We have movies made in Petaluma because we are charming. We don't want to become Austin with big buildings everywhere. We can stand firm, say we are beautiful, historic Petaluma. You want to build in Petaluma, build like a Petaluman. Thank you so much for my opportunity to speak. I love Petaluma. I think we have something precious. Big business sees we can make money here. We have 2 hotels on either side that are not full. We have multiple hotels in town that are not full. We're in a drought zone. God bless you for giving us the opportunity to speak our mind and preserve our beautiful, beautiful town and way of living. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Judy. And is Nina here?
I think this is the appropriate forum. My name is Nina Zito. I'm addressing the Planning Commission. Thank you, community. I'm an investor in the community, and I've been a part of it for over 20 years, having arrived to work for our small town newspaper. And I fell in love with our small town character, its quiet nature, its goodwill, etc. And I bought a little fixer-upper, and I duly fixed it up with the help of the Planning Commission. And I returned in my retirement. Much has changed in the interim. And now I'm finding what it's like to live in that change. And I don't want to be here anymore. What the hell happened? Let me just say it's kind of a surprise. And I'd like to propose that as we move forward in this great prosperous rush, and I can imagine how exciting it is to have all this money coming in for all the good work we want to do, public safety, money for all the projects we want, the housing for the unhoused, the washing for the unwashed, the medicine for, all the good works we want to do. Let's just focus on one simple thing that seems yet recognized by the planning people, who I understand are engineered, science, technology, engineering, and math. Where is the accounting for noise, decibels? Where is the accounting for it? So I'd like to propose that when a planning project, we know how far properties are from one another. And right now we got 3 really noisy freaking things going on right now every day of the week. And I realize it's inappropriate to suggest that a Sabbath be recognized, because many of us have different ones: Friday, Saturday, Sunday, Wednesday night, different phases of the moon. Regardless, all day long on a Sunday, I hear power drills, etc., and I just want some peace and quiet. And this is relevant to me because I've had some encounters with law enforcement because it's too freaking noisy. And we wonder about all the people going crazy and all the people like, this is too much. And could it be that it's just too much for our nervous systems to handle? So I'd like to propose that in clear language, and I realize financing and funding and whatever requires high-level calculations and pulling in all kinds of state and other kinds of calculations, that we just see how far apart are all of these projects going to be, because decibels are logarithmic. and it's too noisy. And right now, I don't see that accommodated, and I think the planning folks need to be paying attention to it. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I am out of cards here. I just want to check if anybody else want to make a public comment before we close. And if you could also make sure to fill out a yellow card for us afterwards, that'd be great. Thank you.
Yes, thank you very much. My name is Noel Mannerud. I'm a resident of Petaluma at 7th and G. So with respect to the overlay, having read through January Historical Commission and some of the other history, there's such a narrative of too much, incompleteness, please try again. But we're right here with the same height bulk mass, and now, in fact, an overlay that is effectively, and I think very wisely, there was some discussion about why do we have an overlay? Because we don't want an exemption, because an exemption then anywhere, right, for this. So that's understandable why there is effectively a general plan amendment. But I think the narrative of no changes being offered effectively from the applicant, and then the submission of an overlay not happening effectively through what feels a transparent process. It's becoming transparent. Thank you very much. I think the fact that we're having a meeting dedicated to the overlay is an expression of where the confusion was. Are we talking about the building? Are we talking about the overlay? I echo so many of the sentiments regarding the charm, the character, the vitality of Petaluma. It's astounding. I've been a resident here for 2 years. It's exceptionally compelling. Therefore, it is worth a level of investment that is collaborative, not just transactional, with respect to how we're all engaged. And the overlay does not feel collaborative, it feels exceptionally transactional. It feels, in fact, transacted to create the envelope within which the building seeks to then be exempt from CEQA. I'm challenged with the overlay as well. There's a number of components of it. Yes, the Phoenix Theater may have a back of house that's 75 feet high, but the general average of that building is mostly in conformance with its adjacent Petaluma Hotel. So there's some false, I think, premises, unfortunately, embedded in the overlay. Ultimately, it seems to me that between the theater district, the historic district, we have a quite reasonable set of limits that establish the nature and the character of development, especially within the historical district. So I think the other thing that the overlay is missing is a little bit more, well, frankly, you know what? It's really not where I want to go to try and modify the overlay, because ultimately what I want to say in the time I have remaining is simply that my preference would be that the overlay process through this application would stop, and we would transfer our energies into the general plan process through 2025. And if the applicant would like to be part of that process as a collaborative member of the community, we welcome that. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. And with that, yes, one more comment. And please remember to fill out a comment card afterwards. Oh, perfect. Oh, we missed you earlier. I apologize.
Hi, I'm Juanita Radford. I lived in Petaluma for well over 50 years, raised my kids here. I brag about how beautiful and how historic it looks. And when I saw 3 articles in the Argus Courier with this hotel, which I call it the hotel that will eat the downtown, and it just does not fit. And what I've noticed in the Argus Courier, I don't know if you read it, it's been on 3 times. most of the comments were so negative of just how huge it is and how it doesn't fit in our city. And so, in a way, I'm hoping that the people of Petaluma can have some say of what and what size hotel will go in that corner that personally I just feel like it doesn't fit here. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And with that, we will close public comment. And now we will move to the approval of the minutes from our July 11th meeting. I wanted to ask if any commissioners had any amendments to make.
I wasn't at the meeting, so I won't be voting on it.
Fair enough. Thank you. If there are no amendments to the minutes, we will we'll move to approve them as presented. Trying to remember, do we have to do a vote for minutes or?
No,
Okay.
votes required. You can just deem them approved, Chair.
Then I shall deem them
Absent
approved.
Objections.
Okay. And now we will get to the main item for tonight, which is our public hearing on meeting item 3. This is a recommendation to the City of Petaluma Planning Commission to conduct a public hearing to review an addendum to a certified final environmental impact report and conduct site plan and architectural review and smart code warrant requests for the proposed development of the Spirit Living mixed-use project, a 4-story mixed-use project consisting of ground floor commercial space and a 106-unit residential care facility for the elderly, located at 500 Hopper Street. This item is a public hearing, and therefore I want to ask if any commissioners have ex parte communications to disclose.
I met with the applicant, and I went to Berkeley to see their facility Sunday.
I was contacted by the applicant ahead of time, but we could not find a time to meet, but nonetheless contact was made.
I visited the site and talked briefly with the director of the planning department.
Understood. Well, from here we will begin open hearing, and I'd like to invite staff to present. I believe we'll be hearing from our principal planner.
Thank you, Chair, members of the Planning Commission, members of the public. My name is Emmanuel Ursu. I'm the project planner that'll be presenting this item to you this evening. As you noted, Chair, this is a request for site plan and architectural review and includes warrants, which are a form of relief from the requirements of the SMART Code. The project is located at the center of the Riverfront development. Riverfront is approximately 40-acre overall development site, as shown in this graphic. Highway 101 is just to the east of the development. The Petaluma River runs south of Riverfront development, and the Smart Railway is on the north side of Riverfront. The vacant former Pomeroy site that is now owned by Scannell Properties is just to the west. The lot in question is in the center of the project. It is lot number 5 of the first final map at Riverfront. The entire project site is in the mixed-use land use designation of the general plan, and it is zoned T6. As you can see in this excerpt from the zoning on the site, the lot 6, which is on the east side of the central green, is also T6. The central green is a civic space. The hotel site in this location is in the T5 zone, and then as is the vacant office site over on the northwest end of the project. The remaining portion of the site is T4, with the exception of the recreation fields and the Riverfront Park. Under the SMART Code, the T-zones are transect zones that go from kind of a rural to urban core. So the T6 is the most intense district. It is intended for mid-rise and Main Street building types. So that's the zone in which it is located. The T5 zone and the T4 zone are the other two transect zones that the project is, or that Riverfront has designated, or zoned, I should say. So in 2014, the City Council approved a master plan for development of Riverfront. It included zoning of the site and the environmental impact report prepared for the overall development. Included analysis of 30,000 square feet between lots 5 and 6 around the central green, with up to 100 apartments on top of the ground floor commercial space, 120-room hotel, up to 60,000 square feet of office, 39 townhomes with 4 live-work units, and then a total of 134 detached single-family homes, and the recreational amenities, which I already mentioned. Some of the pedestrian connections which were very important to the overall design of the project include a trail around, a Class 1 trail that goes around the entire Riverfront project. It includes pedestrian connections with easements through Lot 6, crosswalks and pedestrian connection through the central green, and a pedestrian easement connection through Lot 5 connecting to the play fields in the tot lot over on the west side of Lot 5. The vision for, part of the vision was for a mixed-use development that is pedestrian-friendly. And so that is what the City Council was looking at when it adopted the overall master plan for Riverfront. So I already gave you some background, but let me kind of get into where we are with implementation of the master plan. So in 2014, the EIR was certified for Riverfront. Zoning maps were amended. A vesting tentative map was approved, and the master plan was approved. Then in 2017, the first SPAR approval was granted for the hotel, followed by SPAR approvals for Phase 1, which was about, I think, 15 or so home sites in the North Bank portion, the single-family home portion of the site. Then SPAR's Phases 2 and 3. Phase 2 was this area, and then Phase 3 were the 3 blocks that are closest to the river. Those were for the single-family homes. And then in early 22, the Planning Commission approved SPAR for development of the townhouses at Riverfront. We received an application for an office building. The EIR envisioned a 60,000 and the master plan envisioned a 60,000 square foot office building. We received an application about a year and a half ago for about a 43 square foot office building. This morning, the applicant came in and let me know that there is no market for office, not surprisingly, and they are considering changing the land use proposal for that property to residential. They have not submitted a formal application. They just floated that idea. This first I heard of it was this morning. So the EIR that the City Council certified included 19 acres of residential, commercial, and office uses, 13 acres of right-of-way, and 3.7 acres of civic space, plus an EVA, which was off-site on the adjacent Pomeroy site, and the 3.5-acre Riverfront Park. The entitlements were the rezoning, the tentative subdivision map, which created 4 super parcels, which have since subsequently been subdivided in phases, and then the master site plan approval. The EIR identified significant impacts which were mitigated in these topic areas shown on the screen here. The applicant has come in. This is the third meeting before the Planning Commission. The first 2 were, they presented conceptual site plans and floor plans. They did not have any elevation plans with the first 2 concepts. The Planning Commission expressed concern with each conceptual proposal. They went back to the drawing board, made some revisions, and came back again. They then submitted a formal application in May of last year for, in their conceptual and first formal application, included both lots 5 and 6, which are on either side of the central green. They then withdrew their application and resubmitted with just lot 5. And this gives a kind of a big picture summary of the number of units and square footages that were proposed with each of the various submittals. So the first conceptual proposal had residential care facilities on both sides of the central green, with work-live units shown in blue on both sides. On lot 5, it was all memory care units on the second and third floor. And on lot 6, it was all assisted living units on the second and third floor. There was no fourth floor proposed at that time. The commission provided feedback, indicated that they'd like to see more ground floor commercial. The applicant came back, included restaurant space and commercial space at the north and south ends with live-work units in this area. And then these spaces were spaces, commercial spaces, but they were spaces that they would operate. So it'd be open to the public, but really intended for the occupants of their facility. And then on lot 5, they included work-live units on the ground floor with a lobby area for the residential care facility on the upper level. They had a mezzanine included. Oops, hold on. Yes, so there was a mezzanine included in this level, and then actually I take that back. This proposal had on lot 5 it was all residential uses, not senior care facility. The second floor, third floor had the assisted living units on lot 6, with the memory care units on the upper level. So they went to 4 floors at this point. There were 17 units per floor, so a total of 51 on the 3 floors of lot 5. They revised the project, submitted a 4-story building with 6 live-work units and 35 residential care facility apartments on floors 2 and 3, and 36 memory care units on floor 4 on lot 5. This was the formal submittal they made in May. And then a 133 square foot building with work-live units on the ground floor and the non-age restricted apartments, so 120 apartments on the upper 3 floors. This is what was analyzed in the addendum that was prepared. Based on the revised project, the May submittal, the addendum looked at the number of daily trips. The top here shows the number of vehicle trips that were analyzed in the EIR for Riverfront. This is when there was 30,000 square feet and 100 dwelling units that were anticipated on both lots 5 and 6. With the May proposal, there would be 1,051 daily trips compared to almost 2,000. There was one more trip, an increase of 1 during the AM peak, and a decrease of 49 during the PM peak. And this is what is part of the analysis in the addendum to the EIR that's included in the attachments to this report. They then submitted their formal application that dropped lot 6. Lot 5 constitutes roughly 40% of the total land area between, when you combine the combined land area between lots 5 and 6. So it's 40 dwelling units rather than 100, and 12,000 instead of 30,000 square feet of commercial space. Generates a total of almost 800 trips per day compared to 535 for the proposed project, which is a decrease of 263. an increase of 5 in the AM peak, and a decrease of 6 in the PM peak. So that was what was analyzed in the Riverfront EIR and in the project that was submitted back in May. So what they're proposing is commercial on the ground floor with retail and restaurant and support facilities for the residential care facility. Residential care facilities are licensed by the state of California, and they are intended for persons over 60 who have varying levels of need for personal care, and persons under 60 who have compatible needs. So the project is surrounded by the Central Green to the west, or excuse me, to the east, the Playfield and Tot Lots to the west, the Courtyard Marriott Hotel to the north, and single-family homes to the south. It includes some open space areas. On the second floor, there's approximately 1,700 square foot viewing deck. This overlooks to the west over the playfields. There are 2 small decks at the the third and fourth floor. And then on the roof, there's approximately 1,860 square foot deck area plus a 460 square foot lounge area. Some of the off-site open spaces are the Central Green and Active Park, which I've mentioned, and then the trail network around the project and the Riverfront Park. This is a perspective of the proposal from looking from the northeast, kind of across the street from the Courtyard Marriott Hotel. The ground floor consists of storefronts with vertical board-formed concrete. The upper levels consist of wood panels in the brown area, and then a smooth finish stucco, dark gray with white insets. To break up the mass of the building and provide some articulation, the applicant has these areas that are recessed, and they've created basically like 6 different building components that provide a play of shadow and light and help break the overall appearance of the width of the building. This is a perspective from the south looking north. This area here is actually, it's an open area that's adjacent to a restaurant space. I'll show the floor plan in the next set of slides. This is a close-up at the street level. This is the breezeway pedestrian connection that goes through the building from the Central Green side to the Park side. This is a little further south looking at the storefronts. This is on the alley side. This deck that I mentioned previously functions as a porte-cochere. The alley is a 2-way alley that goes around the back of the building with tuck-under parking spaces. There are 24 tuck-under parking spaces and 5 open parking spaces behind the building, plus the 11 open parking spaces on the street front. This is a portion of the floor plan at the northerly corner of the building, or portion of the building. The hotel is off the plan to the left. The Central Green is to the east on the top, and the playfields are to the bottom. This is the breezeway connection through the building. They have 3 commercial spaces on the storefront with a bike storage room, back-of-house space, and tuck-under parking. The center of the building is devoted primarily to amenity space for the residential care facility, with a reception and lobby area, bistro bar area, and then a lounge area, and then office staff rooms, bathrooms, vertical circulation, laundry, trash, and other back-of-house functions. And then the southerly end is a restaurant with an outdoor dining component, which I mentioned, plus the tuck-under parking. On the second floor, these are all memory care units. With the viewing deck, there are 36 of these units. These are basically kind of like a hotel-size units, almost 30 feet deep, 12 and a half feet wide. No kitchen, just a bathroom and space for up to 2 beds. And then on the third and fourth floor, the floor plans are the same. These are the assisted living units that are intended for residents that are a little more independent. They have studio plans, 1-bedroom plan, and a 2-bedroom plan. They all have a kitchen with sink, range, refrigerator, dishwasher. So that's an overview of the design of the project. We've analyzed the project in the staff report in great detail. We have it's subject to policies of the general plan and the Central Petaluma specific plan. There are requirements of the SMART code that it must comply with, including warrants that are requested for to exceed the overall building width and to allow relief from the parking requirements. And then site plan and architectural review is required. All these standards and there's are laid out in great detail in the staff report. With regard to the site plan and architectural review, the standards address the building as it fits in with the neighborhood and the character in which it's located, including its siting, the architectural style, the quality of the materials, the bulk, height, and color of the building as it fits in with its surroundings, including landscaping and access. With regard to landscaping, the building occupies pretty much 100% of the developable area of the site. There are street trees in the central green, in the park in front and behind it, and this is in the T6 zone, which is intended for the urban core. So, with regards to the warrants, there code limits the width of the first and second floors to 200 feet, and the third floor and above to 150 feet. The overall width is just over 300, almost 323 feet, and that's as measured from the furthest extent on the north side to the furthest extent on the south side. One would never see the entire length from any one vantage point unless you're very far away. And the intent is to preserve the character of the community in the downtown. The building mass is broken with the interplay and the step outs and jogs in and out in the building facade. This is the first time the Planning Commission is seeing the architecture, and I understand if there's some discussion and some the project architect is here this evening and could provide his input as to the design that they've come up with. And this again kind of shows the interplay and the stepping in and out. Again, whether this is adequate or not, I think reasonable minds can disagree. In terms of parking, the parking demand is 20 spaces for the residential care facility, 5 spaces for the retail spaces, and 16 for the restaurant, for a total of 41 spaces. 40 spaces are provided. There is, within 300 feet, 36 excess spaces, and those spaces are not down in the North Bank single-family residential area. They are north along in front of the hotel, and then along the side street where the ball fields are, is where those 36 surplus spaces are located. So 35 after the parking demand for the project is met. So with that, staff recommends Commission consider the project. If the Commission is inclined to and has questions or concerns with aspects of the design, you are not obligated, as you know, to make a decision this evening. It's been the case in most of the applications, at least in Riverfront, where there's been discussion and a continuance to address concerns if there are any concerns with any aspects of the design. So with that, I'll conclude my presentation. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And with that, we will go to the presentation from the applicant.
Come on, turn off.
Thank you, Emmanuel, for your thorough presentation. Good evening, Commissioners, Vice Mayor, and staff. My name is Ali Shabahangi. I am a principal at Spirit Living Group, the project applicant, and here with me today is Kelly Diaz, also John Ennis with BDE Architects, and Daylene Whitlock with W-Trans. We have been working on this project for 3 years with 2 study sessions and numerous revisions, and hope we have been able to address your concerns and feedback. As you may know, the population in Petaluma is getting older. This is a recent article in the Press Democrat showing that the Sonoma County is the second oldest county in the Bay Area. And here's a slide that shows that 25% of Petaluma's population is over the age of 60. That's more than 15,000 residents. But there are very few housing options for them. For example, Petaluma has only 374 senior housing units, and this number also includes the smaller board and care homes. Our proposal here tonight would help solve this housing shortage. And as you can see from this map, with the surrounding homes and the commercial uses, we believe this project would be a perfect fit for the area and lead to a very vibrant and multi-generational village. And by the way, this project would be the only purpose-built senior housing support community in all of West Petaluma. The other 3 are all on the east side and all built in the 1990s. Here is a view of Lot 5 from the hotel. The master plan requires us to put in a 12-foot sidewalk in the front, a 24-foot fire road in the back, and also when you consider the tuck-under parking, the site poses challenges because it's very narrow and there's so much we could do with it. This is the ground level plan. We intend to lease the corners to local serving operators. For example, the corner to the left across from the hotel could have a cafe, ice cream shop, or an annex to Copperfield's Books. And in the opposite corner, we propose a restaurant with an outdoor dining venue. There's also an enlarged public easement there from connecting the central green to the park behind this building. And the green area would serve as the amenity spaces for the apartments on floors 3 and 4. The second floor is designed for seniors requiring more support. This floor is self-contained. It has its own dining area, recreational and outdoor areas. And this slide, it shows the plan for the third and fourth floor, which would provide 70 apartments, each with their own kitchen, washer and dryer, and age-friendly features. Our goal is to have our residents live independently as long as possible. The building would be licensed as a residential care facility for the elderly so that residents can age in place and receive more support if needed rather than being displaced. And here's the building. The entire street front is designed with storefront windows on the sidewalk to create an open and connected pedestrian experience. We would like to show you a brief 2-minute video simulation of the project. Here we are moving down Hopper Street next to what we thought would be the future office complex, maybe residential now. In the background you see the freeway, and now we're turning the corner onto Caulfield Lane. And to your left is the future townhome project, and to your right is the Courtyard Marriott Hotel. Moving down Caulfield Lane to the central green, and to the right is the proposed project. Commercial retail in the corner, passing the pedestrian breezeway. There's passing the restaurant, outdoor dining venue, flying over the single-family homes, which I think are pretty much completed. There's the freeway again. And coming around behind the future townhomes. There's the hotel. Now wrapping around towards the back, the parking lot for the hotel. The back portion of the building with tuck under parking. Flying over the single family homes again. Central green. Just a few words about our approach. Our overall design and programming approach on our projects includes open and transparent design philosophy with local serving retail uses and programming in the building that brings together the young and the older generations. For example, this is our latest senior housing project in Berkeley. It's on San Pablo Avenue off of University in a designated node requiring retail and street activation, which we accomplished with the storefront windows that you see all along the street front. The programming for the building is local serving retail. The corner space we recently leased out to Sweet Bites Bakery, which is operated by mother and daughter. The Luceron Salon was leased to also mother and daughter, coincidentally. That's operational. And then the center of the building, we have an art lab, which we operate. This is the picture of the salon, and you can look at the storefront windows and the connection with the building and to the street. This is a rendering for the Corner Cafe Bakery. And these are some slides showing the engagement between our residents and children. And we would like to bring these multi-generational connections to Petaluma because they energize the space and lead to a more joyful experience, in our opinion. And as a reference point, we would like to point out two projects created by other groups. The first one you're familiar with, called Theater Square. While we appreciate the mix of tenants here with title companies and banks, our approach would be different because our program would be more local serving and we believe neighborhood engaging. Also, this is a senior housing community a mile and a half away from our Berkeley project, also on San Pablo Avenue. And you just wanted to point out the developer here took a different approach. This values privacy more. Our approach is different. Like I discussed, it's more open and engaging, and we believe pedestrian friendly. Just a quick note about us. My brother Amir and I have been developing and managing senior communities almost our entire career. We were both raised by our grandparents and see tremendous value in having our elders remain close to us and at the center of any community, including the riverfront. These are family pictures with our parents, grandparents, and also our great-grandma in the bottom left picture. And it's because of them that we are passionate about our multi-generational, that we are passionate about our work and about multi-generational connections and taking care of our elders. I would just like to conclude by listing some of the project benefits. I would like to note that we would have a full-time driver, and our residents typically will not drive. Very few of them will bring cars here, and even if they do, they typically don't drive often. And I think this is a huge plus for the area because there would be less impact on traffic and parking. And also, lastly, that our team has worked very hard. They put their heart and soul into this project over the last 3 years. The owner of the land has been very patient with us, but our contract is about to expire, so we are worried that we may not be able to come back if we were to continue the project, although I would say we would be happy to make refinements and work with staff if you're inclined to approve the project with conditions tonight. Thank you for your time, and I would be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you very much. The last few meetings we've had, there have been one or two people that end up having to wait quite a long time to get through our question period before they can make a public comment. So just in case there are any parents out there or anybody who's got a hard deadline of sitting in the hall, I just wanted to ask if there are any urgent public comments that folks wanted to make on this now before we get into commissioner questions. All right, then. We will go straight into commissioner questions for both the applicant and staff. I just want to remind folks that we're looking at SPAR review, but we're also looking at the warrants related to Smart Code and the EIR addendum. So please keep these items in mind. We are going to do questions now. We will do comments and discussion after. We will probably fail at this meeting as well, but I will keep trying. So to get started, I will start with our Vice Mayor, Kater Thompson, for any questions she has.
Well, I guess my question is, I went down to the site today, And I really question why this particular site was chosen, since it's next to like a tot lot, it's next to a soccer field, and it just seems like it should have been on the other side of the street. It seems like it's just in the wrong location within the site. And I'm just going to leave it at that at this point. Because, I mean, and I went down to, Berkeley, and the sites are very different. I mean, they're definitely different communities, because the one in Berkeley does not have kitchens. And then this one has kitchens, and it seems like it's almost like it's a senior living, but yet there's a memory care. 2 floors of senior living, 1 of memory care. And it's like, a full kitchen. It's like an apartment living. And where the one in Berkeley is more like, senior living, you go from one tier to the next. And so that kind of struck me as I'm curious why it's this way here. And it seems as though if you're going to have a kitchen, you're more independent than people that just need a refrigerator and a microwave. And so I'm just kind of confused about the difference of the two projects and really why you chose this location versus across the roundabout, I'll call it that, and then kind of using the roundabout as space, for senior citizens. It's just not connecting with me. When I went down to the space, and I just don't really understand why this particular location was chosen, because if it was across, if you had housing where your site is, where we're looking at, it would feather into the neighborhood. Say they were townhomes or apartments, whatever, but it seems like it would feather in, and it just doesn't. I don't feel as though there is enough. In Berkeley, I understand. Actually, it was a very nice facility, and it had big areas, outdoor areas for people to go out, sit, exercise, have friends in there. And the memory care had a little bit smaller facility than the other part of the facility. But here, it just feels like there's not enough green space, there's not enough trees, there's not enough areas that you want to walk out and you feel like you're someplace. And so I'm a little bit confused. So I'm curious.
Sure. I think the park in the back would be a great place for our seniors to go for an outdoor experience. The park also has a children's play area. And so having our seniors interact with the children playing there, I think would be wonderful. We put the kitchens in the top 2 floors to give our residents more choice. So they're not required to subscribe to our dining program. They can cook if they like in their kitchen, so it fosters more independence. And we analyzed both sites at length, and the scale of this property is more appropriate than the one on the other side of the Central Green, which is much larger. I think, personally, I think having seniors in this location complements the overall vision of the riverfront plan, because you have, in the single-family homes, I'm sure families with children, in the future townhouses, also families probably with children, and so this would be the ideal multi-generational village if this were to be approved, to have seniors there as well. I think it's very complementary, and I think it could be a model on a national level to have generations like this mixed together in a master plan like this. The hotel is there. You can have visitors stay there, visiting their loved one. Families living in the single-family homes, for example, if they have a loved one, they could stay in this property. They can be walking distance to one another. So I think this is an ideal opportunity to have seniors here on this lot.
Okay, I'm still not sure if I agree with that, but I will leave it at that for right now.
Thank you. Commissioner Wisman?
Thank you. Thanks again to staff and the applicant for the proposal tonight. Quick question for staff. Is there a status update on the townhomes that would be on the other side between Lot 6 and the freeway?
Yes. So they have submitted for plan check, for vertical plan check for the buildings. They are close to getting their plan check approved. They've gone through a few rounds of corrections, and then the final map and improvement plans are also close to being completed. So the final map will need to go before the City Council for approval. I don't know. I haven't spoken directly with the developer in a while, but so I can't tell you what their construction time frame is. But they're, at least through the review process, they're close to being complete.
Okay, good. Thank you. First question for applicant: what was the reason for eliminating Lot 6?
We're having a challenging time making something work there. The lights are, the lots, both lots are very constrained. They're very tight. There's very limited space for parking. So we don't know what to do with it. And we're not the only group. Other groups have had both lots in contract. They haven't been able to figure it out. These are challenging sites.
Mm-hmm. Okay. But based on what was presented back in November, I guess, of 21 or whenever the previous, was there a change in kind of business conditions or commercial conditions, or was it just more design related?
We priced it out. And we got back estimates that made it infeasible to put in the amount of retail parking. We investigated parking stackers. We're close to the river, so there's the water table is high. So yeah, and also I might add that we also looked at the Azure apartment building on the other side of the freeway. And it's hard to compete with that. They have a saltwater pool. They have a clubhouse. They have an exhibition kitchen. Over 10,000 square feet of amenity spaces. I mean, why would anybody want to come here when they can go there? Plenty of space for parking. It is challenging. So it's hard to take a risk and you know, hope that you'll succeed when you have these challenges. So we had to step back, focus on what we think can work on Lot 5, and then based on what happens tonight, refocus our efforts on Lot 6 and see what might work there.
Okay. Yeah, I appreciate the perspective. In terms of just a before and after comparison and only focusing on the residential care units, how many residential care units were proposed before with Lot 4 and 5? I'm sorry, Lot 5 and 6, and how many are existing now in this proposal?
Gosh, it's been so long with the two. I'm sorry.
If you want to take some time to think about it, we can.
I can't
come back
remember.
to it later. Yeah. Okay.
I've got those numbers. Was in one of the slides I had. So with concept 2, the November proposal, there were on Lot 6, there were 66 apartments or assisted living units and 55 memory care units. And then Lot 5 had 3 levels of apartments, non-age restricted, with 17 units per floor. So a total of 51 units of apartments. I can share this. I guess I can't share it.
Okay. Okay. That's all the questions I have for now.
Commissioner Atkinson.
Great, thank you. Thank you to the applicant for the presentation, and thank you to staff for putting this report together. I'll start with questions from staff, and I'll try to structure what might be too many questions, and we'll try to limit to the top questions here. The first of which, for staff, is kind of building on what Commissioner Wisman said. At the November 9th, this is from staff report page 25, at the November 9th, 2021 Planning Commission meeting, the Commission determined that the RCFE is an allowed use on spaces above the ground floor with ancillary uses on the ground floor. And they advised staff, the applicant, would support the RCFE. This also goes in line with a public comment we received from Veronica Olson. Just getting to this threshold of what do we consider effective mixed use? Because when those statements were made, as was just explained, we were looking at a much different project. I wasn't on the commission then, but I went back and watched it, and it was a much different project with almost entirely live-work units in this lot. It was a much more commercial facing, and I did square footage calculations. I think your table did it better. But basically, now we're at about 18% commercial on that first floor. And unlike the MU1A, B, and MU2 districts outside of the Central Petaluma Specific Plan, there are frontages here. Because I think residential care facilities are deemed to be okay on the first floor if they're not on a street frontage in those other zones throughout the city. So yeah, it's just a question to staff. Do we still feel confident in that statement about that November 21 study session, or what is our threshold for determining what is real activated mixed use and kind of the spirit of what that zoning is going after?
Sure, and this is a qualitative, response, yeah. Right? There's no hard number in the code, and so there were concerns with the live-work units on the ground floor. There's a lot of discussion back and forth on that. There's a push for more just straight commercial use. Working with the applicant, we said, look, let's put any of the components of the residential care facility that have an interaction with the street front. Let's put those at the street front. The other functions, the administrative offices, obviously the back of house stuff, away from the street front. Whether the bistro area and the lounge area, whether those are enough of a interaction with the public, street facing, I guess that's for all you to decide. And it is, yeah, it's I think it's subjective, whether we believe that given its location, given the surroundings, all of those factors I think should play into the Commission's deliberation and consideration of the application. The other, I think, also thing to keep in mind is when we were looking at this, the first two conceptual plans included both lots 5 and 6, and so there was that interplay, and now we really don't know what's happening on lot 6. If lot 6 comes back and there's a proposal for a lot more ground floor commercial, then maybe that provides that activation and that core that we're envisioned in the master plan for Riverfront. On the other hand, if there's less commercial interactive space on the ground floor, then that would be an issue. So it's not there's no easy answer.
Okay, so we have to make the hard decision there. Well, thank you for that, and I appreciate the applicant giving perspective on the economic realities of dealing with these lots. One of my questions was, have you explored doing strictly retail in the frontage like we do in other mixed-use areas, zones throughout the city, but with as tight as that site is? Have you explored that at all, at doing just frontage with traditional retail and some of the other functions related to residential care, either behind or on upper floors? And this doesn't have to be kind of deep explorations, but is it something you guys looked at when putting the site plan together?
We looked at work-live. Mm-hmm. And then to make those work, we had to do a double height podium to make it functional work-live, to have the sleeping area at the mezzanine level. We priced that out, and it was cost prohibitive. We also we will have challenges getting our lender or investor to count any of the income of the retail space towards the pro forma they will subtract that out because they don't believe that those spaces would be, like, too much of retail would be viable from a financial standpoint. So we thought that by offering the retail that we are at the corners, we would strike a balance and still provide local serving uses that would be run like by mom and pop operators like our Berkeley project, and have that activation and have the amenities for the neighbors living in the area, together with our programming for the retirement home, which is activated and would include programming for the neighbors. Like, you know, I do meditation sittings at our Berkeley project. Our neighbors are invited. Our TED Talks, for example, our neighbors are invited free of charge. So there is a lot of engagement. We have staffing that could fulfill the intention of the riverfront plan in a viable way. So we thought that we have a balance that can work, and with a realistic project that would get built.
Yeah, you're pulled between the forces of investors and city zoning and the spirit of what that zoning means. But it sounds like that Berkeley project, you think, is bearing out that blend of having some of these residential care facilities on the ground floor, is somehow integrating with an effective retail landscape. So those are my questions about really kind of land use and zoning. Moving on to design, just want to ask staff, given the checklist we were given for SPAR, I have a lot of questions here about interior space and design. I'm assuming that's all germane to this conversation. These are all things we can get into here.
If you can relate the findings that we need to make for SPAR to any aspect of the project you're looking at, I'm not sure how you do that with the interior space per se. So we're really looking at, so there are those A through, I think, G findings of SPAR that we really need to have the focus of our conversation. If there's a way the interior space interplays with the design of the exterior, by all means, that's fair game.
Okay, and that's good guidance. So I think the obvious one is kind of external view sheds, outdoor spaces, landscaping, street trees. I think, per the report here, it says landscaping is limited to street trees in the public right-of-way fronting the project site. No on-site landscaping is proposed, and the project site has no existing trees. In doing a lot of reading, as we have to do for projects like this, outdoor landscapes, outdoor space, beautiful for physical and mental well-being for folks in RCFEs. I'm telling this, you're in the industry. So can you just explain a little behind that decision of not to expand on kind of outdoor landscaping or integrating outdoor space? I know there's that one big platform on one of the levels. Have you thought of doing more? Is there any ability with the site, because you're not using up the whole footprint, to do more with landscaping and exterior?
Yes, thank you. Definitely there will be landscaping on the Porte Crochet. And with respect to more landscaping on the site itself, I'd like to invite John to discuss that. John's the architect.
Yeah, that's a great question. John Ennis, BDE Architecture. We only do residential projects, apartment buildings, condos around the Bay Area. And a lot of times we have large sites, a couple acre sites where we can have landscape podiums and landscape courtyards and setbacks and things like that. The way I see this project going was it was a master plan where there was parks approved, kind of these sites were conceptualized, one day they'd be built, but across the street you have a Central Park green. So I'm considering that part of the project, and I think the master plan considered that part of the project. I also think across the alleyway, there's an active park. So you have an active park and you have a contemplative green park, very well connected, with connections through the building, which I think is very interesting. So although that's not green planted, those connections are very interesting, like at Theater Square where there's that cut through. And I think that engages those sites, those green, the Central Park and the active park to this project. And I can see very well, I have 4 parents who could live here right now in different states of, some of them would be on different floors here. And I think that, the grandkids come, they can go for a walk either to the, more contemplative green park, or depending on who it is, maybe go walk the dog out in the active park, throw a ball, that kind of thing. So I think if you kind of widen the scope of looking at the project, if you include those parks as part of this project, which I think that was the main, that was what was approved, so many years ago, those parks. If they weren't approved there, they wouldn't be there. I guess that's, so they were conceptualized as part of this project, and that's the way I've seen it. To step back, 5 feet to put a planter on the ground in front of the building would be very difficult to do based on the site. It's already a very narrow site. So I guess that's more evidence of what I thought was the original framers and approvers of this master plan saw that green space and used it. The stormwater treatment is also handled in that central green, I think. I talked to Steve LaFranchi about that. So that's my take on green space and open space. There is also a really fantastic roof deck, which will also be landscaped when we submit the permit drawings. But there'd be planters and sunshades and all kinds of things up there, served by an elevator. So that's
okay.
My comment on that.
Okay, well, and I'll save commentary, but I appreciate you framing that and giving me the backdrop. And then on just relating to the overall character of the neighborhood, in reading the Central Petaluma Specific Plan, the lower reach has the most leeway in terms of the character and design that's been established. What was your frame of reference for matching the character in a neighborhood that the character is kind of coming together right now? Because I saw reference to throughout to the Courtyard Marriott, which I don't know if that's 100% our bench or the ideal benchmark.
Yeah.
Nothing against them, but what was your inspiration tying this together with the neighborhood?
Well, I think that this is a new neighborhood. We try not to do Disneyland kind of thing where we're creating a craftsman building or a Victorian building that might fit in on other parts of the neighborhood. I've done several projects in Petaluma. Some are more on Water Street. We did an apartment building that has a slightly more industrial, kind of agrarian type look, similar of the grain elevators that are down there. I think this is a new neighborhood without a lot of context. So we tried to do something a little more forward-looking. The shape of the building is kind of interesting. It's hard to put a traditional craftsman Victorian thing on a building that's shaped like a crescent with sharp corners. So we took a little bit of inspiration from the site that was approved and worked with that shape and kind of instead of extruding that up, we kind of made the section and elevation of the building at the corners, I think in perspective, match the plan a little bit and use materials that were I think, a little bit more forward-looking, similar to maybe some of the people who are living here. I think there's other opportunities in Petaluma to live in Victorians and craftsmen, and I think this is a little more forward-looking and on a site that doesn't detract from a historic neighborhood, in our opinion.
Okay, I appreciate that as well. Again, I'm going to leave comments out. I had a question in here of how you guys have employed evidence-based design for your residents, given it's a residential care facility. But I would imagine a lot of that goes into the interior of the building. But just thinking of the health and well-being of your residents, can you point out, maybe highlight any feature or on the exterior that's gone into specifically catering to the residents that are going to be there? Memory care and independent living.
Well, I think memory care, it's not the connection there is really just trying to provide a comfortable place with natural light and universal design with grab bars and things like that. We would do that in all the units. I'm not sure what you mean by evidence-based design exactly with respect to this project, so I'm not going to pretend I know. So if you want to talk a little bit more about that, I might answer the question a little more accurately.
Yeah, and again, this is through my digging. It's designed tailored to promote physical and mental well-being of residents. A lot of times this is talking about interior spaces. Everything down to the carpeting you use in residential care facilities can have an impact.
That makes sense to me. Sorry, I'm interrupting.
Yeah. No, that's okay. But if you could call out anything like that in the design process, that tailors the site.
Simply having your own washer and dryer inside your unit is unbelievable. I remember when I moved to Petaluma in 1996, I had to go do my laundry next to 7-Eleven. It wasn't all bad, but it was nice later on when I had a few more bucks to get my own laundry machine. So we're putting those in all the units. That's not standard of all apartments. We do a lot of 100% affordable projects where they're not inside the units. They're in facilities where you have to go. Natural light, also having air conditioning and filtration. So when it's smoky, you can still get fresh air through filters, I think MERV 13 filtration, things like that. So access to light, access to amenities inside your unit. Having these kitchens are going to be fit out. They're going to be condominium quality in terms of the appliances and things like that. And the open space, the roof deck, we find those are the most commonly used spaces. People like to go there at at sunset in Petaluma, the weather's usually very nice. It gets a little windy at the end of the day, but I think having that access to open space and, frankly, be able to walk across the street to a park, those are things we don't always get in our projects. So I think it's a lot of great amenities.
Okay, great. No, I'll avoid getting into the interior too much. So those are my questions really about the site and general design. Regarding CEQA, this is a question for staff. In attachment B, the air quality and greenhouse gas assessment on page 6. This is also referenced in the EIR addendum on page 14. They use 2017 Bay Area Air Quality CEQA air quality guidelines. And I just noted that April 2022, there were updated standards released. And that was just before the consultant put forth their air quality and greenhouse gas assessment. I'm just wondering if we should look at having them use their analysis, their modeling metrics. And to be honest, what I noticed was the 2022 guidelines include updated chapters on thresholds of significance, air quality and climate impacts, and mitigating impacts, updated criteria, air pollutant and precursor impacts. So seem to be potential relevant updates. Sometimes those CEQA guidelines, they don't update thresholds appreciably or at all. Just wondering if it would be appropriate for us as part of this addendum to ask for using the most updated guidance, or if that was discussed already and deemed not a concern because there wasn't a huge change in threshold.
If it was discussed, I was not part of that conversation. So our environmental planners worked on the addendum, and I did converse with them about the addendum, but not that particular issue. I think it would be appropriate to have them take a look at it, and if it's necessary to update it to the most recent published standards, then by all means we could do that.
Yeah, like I said, it may be that the thresholds for their project didn't change, but I think that's worth putting in there. And then just in the EIR addendum, you referenced that it was put together in a prior version, basically, of the project or prior iteration. Just functionally, approving this addendum when the project description doesn't match what we're looking at, is this something we change on the fly? Do we have to kind of bring it back, or how does that work?
Yeah, so as long as what you're approving is lesser included, has been analyzed,
got it.
So we're fine. So we went back and forth. We did have a detailed conversation about this topic. Do we scratch the whole addendum, prepare a new one based on just Lot 5? And we're like, okay, there's some benefits to doing that, but the downside to doing that is we know Lot 6 is likely to come forward. We would then be accused of potentially be accused of segmenting the analysis and the impacts. So we're like, it makes most sense to have the addendum look at both lots 5 and 6. We did have the technical studies updated to just address Lot 5 to make sure that with just Lot 5, since it's 40% of the total area between the two, that we're not exceeding 40% of the impacts of that parcel. So we did look at it both ways, but the addendum is prepared for both lots 5 and 6, and what's being proposed is lesser included within that analysis.
So if later we do see Lot 6, will that be included under this addendum?
Depends on what's proposed on Lot 6.
Okay, if they don't change it
if it deviates from what's been analyzed, and it may deviate just slightly in a few different areas, we'd look at those areas to ensure that what's being proposed has been analyzed under this addendum, and if it hasn't, we would then need to, I guess, prepare a new addendum or amend the addendum. I'm not sure. I think it'd be a new addendum at that point.
Addend the addendum. Okay, those are my questions. Thank you.
Commissioner Bauer?
Thank you very much, Chair. I just have a few questions. One was, I see that, there is a full-service restaurant and the other commercial space that's open to the public, but I also read about this bar and a rooftop bar. Are those open to the public too?
The rooftop bar is not open to the public.
Mm-hmm.
It's the amenity space for the residences.
Okay, and did I see a bar that was not open to the public too in the list?
The area in the green would be a bar, and that's that's part of the amenity space for the residences.
Okay. Yeah, it seems like that's something that could and should maybe be open to the public. I'm just saying the more things that are open to the public, I think the happier we would be. So maybe other commissioners will comment on that too. But yeah, I don't know if I see a big utility for a bar space for this kind of use, for assisted living. But okay, if you think it would work, but I'm not sure about that. I also wanted to talk about the color scheme a little bit. I saw there was a lot of brown, and I think that was supposed to be wood. It was not at all clear what kind of wood it was. Is it wood? Is it real wood? Fake wood? What is that?
It's called, the product is called Prodema.
Uh-huh.
It is a real wood veneer cut from a tree, and it has a film over it so that it doesn't need to be painted. It doesn't fade over time, and it holds that same color. Kind of similar to what's behind you. So it's hard to render that, so it looks orange, but they make 3 or 4 different colors, and they're quite beautiful, used in a lot of multifamily housing projects around the Bay Area. If you Google that, you could see it. It's a little hard to render. I think on the materials board, it shows a piece of it a little more accurately.
Do we have a materials board here?
In the.
Okay, but we don't have one here, right, to see.
Yeah.
Okay, because it's hard to see the
color. I think you could see it pretty well if you look at that sheet.
Okay.
Yeah,
okay.
Sorry about that.
That's okay. Let's see. The other thing I want to talk about, so when I was going through, I saw that there was an awning in the back of the property, right? It seems like that should be in the front of the property, but why is it in the back?
The property line around the building was set in a master plan a long time ago.
Okay.
We were allowed, we checked with the fire department. Really, that's in EVA along the back for fire department access. We needed a few parking spaces across the street, so we wanted to connect that so no one would have to walk through the rain or weather. So it's a convenient drop-off out of it. I don't think we'd be allowed to do a drop-off. Traffic wouldn't like that. It would block. There's parking. There's all kinds of a nightmare there. So, yeah, I mean, it's more kind of a functional porte cochere, but it's really just to cover those spaces, to have covered parking and a connection. I appreciate that. But it also creates a great opportunity for a deck 1 floor up. Outdoor space.
Will things be built on top of that awning? What you're saying? Or?
It's a deck. It's a covering.
If
we're talking about the same thing, over those parking spaces right there, it extends over the road. Fire department can drive under it, and there's a deck on top.
That's not the rooftop bar.
There's another one on top of the whole building. So there's a lot of open space.
There's 2 roof type of open spaces. Okay.
And I think the one we're talking about right now on the second floor is for the memory care units only. They will need to be a little bit more contained.
Okay,
that
got
makes
it.
sense. Yeah.
Okay, yep, hear that. Let's see. One other question. I want to just dig in a little bit on what Commissioner Rakusin was saying about the trees and greenery out front. Is there really no room for trees in the front?
There are trees.
Okay, I know, but right in front?
There's trees. They're on the plan. If you zoom in, there's circles all along the front of the building. There's trees.
Okay, I guess I didn't see them in any of the renditions, really.
So all of the landscape was approved as part of the master plan.
Right,
So those street trees. So we didn't have we didn't need to re-render them or redraw them. I know we left them up so you could see the building. Sometimes you show the trees, they say you're hiding the building.
It makes it look nice.
Yeah.
I mean,
they're big. They're big trees. The sidewalk is quite wide, so the trees can grow. You know how sometimes trees are planted against the building, there's like half a tree and the rest of it grows out. These are far enough out that I think they can develop a really beautiful canopy. They're probably London Plains trees. Also in the back, I can see them from here. On the backside against the park, the same row of trees are all the way along there.
All right.
So we have trees on both sides.
All right. Okay. Well,
nice big trees.
Thanks for clarifying. But yeah, it would have been helpful to have them in the pictures.
I agree. I
okay.
agree.
Thank you. Okay. That's all I have.
Thank you very much. Before I get to my questions, I just wanted to remind for anybody who came in a little late that we moved to have the overlay discussion, have a continuance to the August 8th meeting. So if you were here to give public comment for that, just want to give you a quick reminder that we'll be doing that at the August 8th meeting. Okay, now I actually have quite a few questions I'd like to get into, and I will do my best to keep it specifically to exterior, although with the ground floor and mixed use, there will be a few interior questions. Notice in the report and the design, you've got, and this is for the applicant, you have 3,685 square feet for laundry room, trash room, and service corridors. that have been framed as also being quasi-commercial activity, as well as a kitchen. And so part of my question was, is this that the other commercial spaces will share these areas for use, or are these, rent a laundry unit? What kind of thing?
No, the answer is both. Some of them are particular to the residential care facility, and some will be shared, like the trash room will be shared. That's why there's a service corridor. But so, normally when we analyze how much areas commercial space, we do include the back of house because you have to have that. I know it's not, people can't go there, but you need that to support it. So, so some of those, like there's a corridor in the back, there's MEP, there's going to be an electrical room that's going to serve the whole building. We probably won't have gas, but there'll be a telephone room, water riser, probably water pump, things like that. And those go in some of those gray areas. But other than that, some are shared and some are not. Laundry would just be for the residential units.
And I take it same with the kitchen as well?
The kitchen's probably there's two kitchens. I think there's one on the memory care and there's another one, and that would serve this open green space right here on this floor.
Understood. Okay. And then my question has already been asked with regards to the lounge / bistro bar, which it looks like is going to be entirely for the center. But yes. I did want to ask, you talk a lot about living in place senior care. Is there going to be enough space, any place on the first floor that allows for interaction with the community, especially when it comes to the arts or any activities that are beneficial for seniors that don't keep them cooped up?
Yeah, I think the applicant should talk about that because they run the building. So.
Yes, I think the green space will give us sufficient space to have group activities, and it will satisfy the programming for the building and also offer programming, like multi-generational programming that we do in our Berkeley project.
Got it. Okay. And then this question is for staff. The Central Petaluma Plan calls quite a bit for active engagement and mixed use in this area. And the Riverfront Plan talks about vibrant, engaged activity. And I think Commissioner Rakusin already hit a version of this question, but I'm going to ask it again just the same. Is there a threshold for what is considered truly mixed use versus approaching mixed use?
So the only thing I'd add to my prior response is there is a minimum depth in the SMART code for street fronting spaces, 30 feet minimum, and the commercial spaces here meet that 30-foot depth requirement. And that's a quantitative standard. I haven't seen any other, in terms of total floor area, the percentage of kind of customer interaction type of use versus.
So we don't have like a square footage ratio for the
not that
project?
I've seen in any of our policy documents, and I don't know, Andrew, you haven't seen it.
Got it. So. All right. Moving past the ground floor and talking about memory care, the second floor. And again, I'm trying to keep to exterior, but I did see a fair bit regarding balconies. Do you have plans with regards to ADA access and safety measures for all of the outside spaces?
100% of the building will be fully accessible to all people, all persons. Yeah, all doors, all thresholds, all decks, elevators, even the landings of the stairs. Not the stairs, but the landings and the stairs. So, yeah, no thresholds that would create any kind of barriers at all.
Understood. And for the 1,700 square foot viewing deck, which I have to say is larger than some homes, there's no green space really in this project. And I just had to ask, that is a large viewing deck. One, who has access to the viewing deck? And two, is there an opportunity here maybe to have more community garden space within the building?
So certainly those decks will be landscaped with planters. When we get to that detailed level. So we would have planters there of, short planters with ground covering that could be community gardens for the building, certainly. We could have taller ones with some trees in pots and probably some shade structures that would be more like furniture type of things. So they'd be green. Yeah. on all of those spaces. The small ones maybe on the third and fourth floor aren't big enough for that, but the one on the roof and the one on the second floor would.
Got it. And then, and you might have slipped past me. Who will have access to that large deck? Is it just memory care units or the whole building?
All the residents of the buildings. I don't know if the memory care people can go or with someone or if they're accompanied, but in general, the people inside the building can utilize those spaces.
So I think you're answering, I think the question was regarding the deck over the portico share at the second level. That's intended for the memory care residents. The rooftop deck is intended for...
Oh, yeah, no, I hadn't gotten to the rooftop deck.
So it's segregated. Memory care is just going to use the one on the second floor because of their... It's just they want to control access to that.
Understood. And since we're talking about the top floor, will there be consideration for, again, adding more green space, gardening opportunities, especially since you're going to have that flat?
Yes, for sure. I don't want to restate what I just said, but that would apply to both of those larger decks, yes.
Thank you.
For sure. There's a photo that the applicant would like to show that would be emblematic of the use. Is that the...
Yeah. I'll put up a slide for the outdoor space for the memory care floor for the Berkeley project, so you can see what we've done. Yeah, make it smaller. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah, that's the outdoor area for the memory care floor on the Berkeley project.
So very lounge focused.
Sorry?
So very lounge focused.
Yes.
All right. Thank you. I will also try to follow my own advice and keep it just to questions right now. For bicycle parking, what does the access point look like for that storage area? That was just one thing I couldn't find on the plans.
If you want to put the plan up. Can you zoom in on the bike room?
Yeah.
So I think...
There it is.
Yeah, so the door is right off the walk there.
Right, okay. I have so many questions about how the space is being allocated there, but that is interior, and I will move on.
What's shown there is like a double-decker bike rack with a hydraulic assist. So you have two rows of bikes against the wall there.
Very nice. All right. And then in terms of the lot 6 of it all, you'd mentioned that it's been difficult to kind of figure out what you're going to do there. Sorry, you thought you could leave, and then I bring you right back. Part of the question I have, though, is like we're focused right now on what is largely a senior care facility with some commercial attached. Do you intend, like we've seen several iterations of the lot 5 and lot 6, all of which have had a fair amount of like apartment use in the other lot. Staff seems to feel pretty confident they're going to see an iteration of it. Are we likely to see more just regular use apartments from a project coming from you? I know you don't have something in writing right now, but I'm just trying to get an idea of if we're looking at this now and we don't know what lot 6 is, we're going to have to do a lot on faith.
The feedback from the first study session where we presented senior housing on both lots was such that we took out the senior housing option on lot 6. Just sounds like you don't want that much senior housing. So we're limiting it to the smaller lot.
Understood. Okay. And then now I have some questions for staff. So thank you. For the, I mean, approvals for the tentative map went all the way back to 2014. We had the Petaluma specific plans, implementation of this. We had the riverfront plan or master plan. From what I read in the report and what I read of the documentation online, a lot of that called for this to be kind of our densest, most urban, robust, and kind of pedestrian-focused, engaged area. So one question I have, I know we've looked at versions of this project before and we've responded to them over time. From staff's perspective, though, and this didn't quite get called out in the report, how far of a deviation is this from what was intended back when they focused all of the amenities, all of the commercial, and kind of all of the density to this one area of the project?
Yeah. So the in terms of the floor area ratio, if you will, okay, it's denser than what was envisioned in the master plan. It's a 4-story structure versus a 3-story structure. The one way aspect in which it is less intense in terms of its development is the fact that it does not have 12,000 square feet of commercial ground floor space, which is 40% of the 30,000 that was envisioned around the central green. So I think that is the one respect in which it is less intense. Whether the amount of interaction of the ground floor space devoted to the residential care facility is interactive enough, and or if it occupies too much of the space, again, what that line is between straight commercial and amenities for the care facility is really, I think, a subjective question that the Planning Commission has the privilege of making that decision. I don't know that I could add more to that. In terms of prior discussions, the building occupies pretty much 100% of the net building or lot footprint. It is intended to not have a lot of landscaping on the site itself. That's not what's intended in the urban core. And when you look at the smart code, it's pretty clear that is the case. You look in downtown Petaluma, there's really, it's the street trees with a few small, planter areas and so on as for landscaping. So I think it really comes down to the commission's comfort level. One of the things that I did speak to the applicant about is the back of house spaces behind the second and third tenant spaces, commercial spaces, kind of next to the bike room. I said, that seems like a large back of house space there. Do you need that much area? Can you move that wall, shift that wall back towards the alley? And they said that might be possible. So I think there's some additional floor area that could be picked up there. Same thing with the restaurant space. That back of house space behind the restaurant seems a little large. I suggested they consider, making that more of a corridor with, if they can accommodate all their back of house needs. So they were open to that. Again, that's kind of on the margins. I don't know if that's really adequate to address, some of the concerns that I'm hearing from the commission.
All right. Thank you for answering that unnecessarily broad question on my part. There have been I've had a few issues looking through this with how, and this really I doubt is the fault of the applicant, so I'm just trying to drill down on this. It's a lot of pedestrian access across what still are effectively motorized access points, and I do have a lot of concerns there. I see that the applicant has done their diligence at the very least of having those access corridors through the building. My question is, if we have long-term concerns about protecting pedestrian access, especially if we potentially will have seniors crossing from this facility over to the park in the center, or to the adjacent park, or to the hotel, or what have you, is there another project down the road where we'll have another bite at trying to resolve some of the pedestrian issues here, or is this something we're going to have to look at long term?
So let me make sure I'm understanding the connection issue. Number one, the location of that breezeway connection is that's set in the map, that with the subdivision map. There's a 10-foot easement. This is actually probably twice the width of that easement.
Yeah.
So I'm sure if the city would like to move that and the applicant agrees.
Fine.
Oh, okay.
My concern, and what I'm trying to get at is, we have the easement, they have the access point. That is great. It's just in all the meetings we've had leading up to this point on different projects, I feel like one project to the next, we've kind of kicked the can down the corner when it comes to figuring out how we're actually going to make it easier for pedestrians who are walking in these denser causeways to have an easier time with the amount of traffic that we should probably expect to drive through here. So my question is, I doubt it's for this project, but at what point will we be able to review how we make some of these crossways a little safer?
I think the ship has sailed on that with the approval of the master plan and in all the final maps, that tentative maps and final maps that have been approved. I'm not sure exactly which connection points you're concerned with, but there may be.
So what you're saying is we'd need a time machine to go back 14 years and. Gotcha.
Probably, yes.
All right, that answers 90% of my questions, so I won't string that along anymore. That's it for me right now. I'll move on. I feel like I've monopolized a lot of time.
Thank you. We've had a lot of discussion on the whole project, the concept, both sides of the village green, but we're really only talking about Lot 5. What happens if Lot 6 doesn't happen? If I understand it might be for sale. If they sell it, what control do we have? What happens there? What happens to the concept of a balanced idea, urban design?
Yeah.
I mean, if they come back and say we want to build townhouses, we don't want to do 5-story, or I mean, what are the controls, or what are we approving tonight?
So the same thing happens that's happening tonight would happen when you consider Lot 6. So we would receive a development application. We would review it for consistency with all of the requirements of the smart code, with the zoning in place, and we would go through a site plan architectural review process. So it'd be whether it's this applicant that owns the property and comes forward, or it's a different applicant. The criteria are the same. The standards are in place, unless the city council decides to change the zoning on the property. But barring that, it would be the exact same thing we're going through this evening.
Let's say that the first phase, Lot 5, doesn't perform the way we would hope it would. And that says maybe we should question Lot 6 differently or treat it differently. How does that work? I mean, are we approving design guidelines that would dictate what Lot 6 becomes with this? Or is it
I think there's flexibility in, so the SPAR standards include criteria regarding compatibility. When the Courtyard Marriott Hotel was approved, that didn't necessarily dictate what all of the other architecture in Riverfront needs to look like. It did set a tone, and having something that's compatible in terms of mass and scale doesn't conflict with it, contrast with it dramatically, then I think, yes, this does set the tone for what could happen on Lot 6, but it doesn't necessarily strictly dictate how Lot 6 is going to look when it's developed.
Okay, I guess was the crossing from Hopper and Caulfield across the river to Petaluma Boulevard, that was not envisioned in 2014 when this concept was developed?
Oh, no, it was definitely envisioned. And if you drive down Caulfield Lane towards the river, that last block, the elevation is raised to account for the transition to the bridge. So it's definitely envisioned as part of the future development of this whole area.
So the roundabout was designed for that capacity?
The roundabout was designed.
Do you know what that
and laid-
capacity is through the roundabout?
The vehicle capacity, I don't know.
Shouldn't we know that?
I don't think it's pertinent per se to this project. I think what may be pertinent to this project is ingress and egress from the site itself. If there are concerns with vehicular pedestrian ingress and egress, that is within the scope of our SPAR review, but the existing roadway network is outside the scope of the review this evening.
Well, I think it is pertinent to this project, not specifically to the application, but to the quality of what we're trying to build here, and the quality of the pedestrian crossing that were mentioned, and the issues with pedestrian crossing, and the amount of traffic coming through here. This is an arterial highway coming through this project. I assume it's something like 2,000 cars, ADT, something like that. I don't know.
Yeah, so
whatever arterial highway capacity is, this is designed to handle that. And that concerns me a lot in terms of quality of what we're building and quality of what is going to eventually build out. The project is not causing the traffic, and probably the project has the least amount of traffic of any housing project we're reviewing. But I think the design of that roundabout and the way the vehicles are moving through it affect how this project functions. For instance, I think that the alleyway access to the back of both 5 and 6 is right where you don't want decision-making of someone merging right or left around that roundabout or coming around. And it seems like you're asking for some real traffic issues there. On both ends of the roundabout. I think pedestrian crossings at the point they are is the wrong place for pedestrian crossing, given the decision that the driver's making. He's deciding if he's going to go around, go right, and the pedestrian, there's no light there, I assume, or no signal. So, I mean, and a roundabout that's the purpose, that you keep flowing, there's no stopping.
There are stop signs and the approach to the roundabout from the north and from the
There are
west.
stop signs?
Certainly, yes.
On an arterial highway?
So there's a stop sign when one is driving eastbound into the roundabout. So the graphic that's on the scale now, on the screen now, in the top left there on the north side of the building, that's a stop. And then when you're coming down from the north, so you're heading south next to the Courtyard Marriott, there's a stop sign there as well.
Coming into the roundabout.
Coming into the roundabout from the north end.
But what about the roundabout?
There's, like in the center of the roundabout? I'm not sure I follow.
Is there a... Can you put this one up there?
Can I share my screen?
Yeah, this one?
Okay, come on, let's go to. Hold on, let me. Okay, so I don't know if you can see my cursor up here. So coming south, next to the hotel, there's a stop sign in this location, and then coming from the west, coming east, there's a stop sign here. So traffic coming east would come to the stop sign. You can only turn right. You can't turn left here. If you want to go to the left, you'd have to go around the Central Green to go up this way. There is, I don't think there's a traffic stop sign when you're coming north at this point, but I'm not certain about that. The pedestrian connection follows this alignment through Lot 6. There's a crosswalk in this location, and then another crosswalk in this location. So traffic that's coming to the stop sign would be stopped and it would just be barely leaving the intersection, and will not have. It's not like a mid-block crosswalk where the speeds are very high, and then the pedestrian connection is and basically lines up with it on Lot 6. This graphic is an older graphic, shows it down here.
Well, I guess what I'm asking for is more specific knowledge of the traffic engineering reality of this project, of what's going through this project, so we know how the project has to react to it. If this is an arterial highway capacity, I question whether these stop signs are real or whether they're really warranted or desirable. So that's information we need, I think, before we.
So what I can share with regard to traffic volume going over the future bridge, and this is based on the traffic study done for the Scannell project, which is next door on the 40-acre site next door. And this is on an earlier version of the project when it included 197,000 square feet of office space. So the volumes are actually higher. When
I asked for Scannell traffic, there was no information available.
There was a administrative draft environmental impact report that was prepared based on an earlier iteration of the project. So it will need to be redone. But and I see W-Trans Daleen Whitlock is here.
To answer your question. She's our traffic engineer.
Yeah, so let me just finish in terms of the traffic volume. So in the AM peak, there's a total of 1,387 vehicles that would go over the bridge, both northbound and southbound.
Say that number again.
Almost 1,400.
That's average daily traffic?
No, that is during the AM peak. That is in both directions.
Peak hour, both directions.
Yeah, so 726 going south, 661 going north over the bridge. This is based on the Scannell admin draft for a prior iteration of the project. And then in the PM peak, the total would be about 1,650 vehicle trips. Of that, 868 are going southbound and 778 are going northbound. So a total of about 1,650.
All right. I'd just like to see how that works with the current configuration and stop signs and all that.
Okay.
Commissioner McCarroline, before I did want to note, we were talking with the city engineer today regarding some of the anticipated issues along this stretch of Caulfield, running from Lakeville all the way to the bridge. And they are interested in looking at design throughout the entirety of that roadway. And as they get more into the design of the bridge and understand more the flow of traffic. So I think we'll continue to put a point on this for them and encourage them to pursue that analysis as part of the bridge design project.
So what is the timing of that, you think?
Well, the bridge design project is funded. It is underway, and it's anticipated in, I believe, completion in summer of 2025.
Thanks for that, Andrew. And also, commissioners, I'd like to add that we know that the Caulfield project is going to get its own EIR. It will have to. So there's going to be some pretty significant analysis of it and its impacts still going forward. Thanks.
Okay, so how do I get a full picture of what's going to happen here in terms of traffic? How do we get that information?
Well, it's a little complicated, and things are happening they're unfolding at their pace. We have an already approved an entitled map that you're inheriting, and there've been a few references to that tonight, and about that I can say it is what it is. However, it's also true that one of the findings for SPAR approval is project circulation, but it's project circulation, not off-project road circulation. So the way the SPAR findings talk about that is generally ingress and egress and circulation within the project. So those are considerations for the commission regarding the SPAR. And clearly those can have impact on and be impacted by the corridor, but the corridor's not up for review right now, but we'll be getting review as part of the Caulfield project and its EIR. So, staff are doing their best to share the information we have, try to frame what's before the Planning Commission with respect to this project and what, further considerations will happen regarding circulation in this part of the city. Thanks. Thank you.
All right.
Okay, Kevin?
Yes, okay. So this is my first meeting. I've been an architect for 55 years, so most of my comments will be directed at architecture and urban design. I've got to say that I am somewhat disappointed in what I think is a certain lack of imagination. If you could show this slide of the townhouses next to the building that you're proposing. While you're doing that, I'm almost 72. I could end up in this place, and I got to tell you, this does not look like a place I would love. And I think an old folks' home should have that quality of, I love being here, not just some place to store you until you die. And there is a certain feeling, for instance, with the windows. Why did you not set any of the windows back? Why is it all so flat? Is that all just money?
Well, no. How far back are you talking about? Like
well,
a foot? In a masonry building, the thickness of the building sets where the window goes. So if you have a brick building that's 16 inches thick, the windows can be set back a foot. Okay. When you have a wall that's 6 inches thick and the window's about 5.5, it's kind of the practicality of building. Yes.
What it seems to me that you might not have considered how thin these units are and how deep they are in terms of light penetration. They seem to be very thin, and if that is west, is that right? That's west?
The opposite direction. West
That's
is to the
east,
left. Yeah.
And that's west. So you've got the long part of the building with very, very intense lighting both in the morning and in the evening. So it seems to me that the windows, have you considered how the windows could respond to the amount of light that these old people with their very bad eyes are going to be bombarded with light?
We're going to have window coverings, Mecca shades that block most of the solar gain but allow view and light.
I've lived for years with Mecca shades. Yeah. They do not work.
Well, they work in my house.
But anyway.
So anyway.
So I'm concerned about the thinness of these. And have you done any solar shadow studies of what the sun is going to do to this building?
What the sun is, I'm not sure what that question means.
So you know what a solar study is?
Yeah.
Okay.
Usually we do those to study a shadow's effect on the surrounding properties, like if you want to shade a park.
Yes, but it also on the architecture itself.
Yeah.
So let's see. So, is there a standard? It seems like the units vary all over the place in terms of thickness. Some are very teeny tiny and some are not.
No, they don't really vary that much. The depth chassis for an apartment is usually 30 to 32, 3 feet. These are 30. Very typical.
And how wide are they at the door?
Depending on the size at the door of the unit.
At the door of the unit. And then
so usually have a 5-foot space to meet code. 5 feet includes a door and 18-inch swing. And then the chassis depend on if it's a studio, if it's a 1-bedroom or 2-bedroom. So that's how it sets the width.
Is it possible for you? So here's one thing I would say.
Yeah.
And this is to do with process, nothing to do with you. But it seems to me that we in planning depend way too much on plans that look like that and not realizing what does this mean in 3 dimensions. So, for instance, the townhouses that are next to this building, they're at a completely different level. It makes the whole thing look so dinky. And then you're next to the Marriott, and the Marriott has absolutely no relationship to this. So I think it looks to me that this facade study was done very quickly, and when good buildings are designed, you don't wait till 10 months in to do the facade.
Well, you do, if that's a question, you do when you don't know how many stories are on the building and you don't know the uses of each floor. So we had 2 meetings to determine how big the buildings were, whether they were apartments or memory care. So you have to understand, we didn't have a program until we started to do that. Once we had a program, we did that. To the width of the units, the units are really, so when you go out, if you were going to go look at an apartment, your friend or your wife or whoever you're with, you're going to go look at a 1-bedroom, say. You go look at all the 1-bedrooms in Petaluma. There aren't any available right now, but we're working on that. Yeah. They're all about the same size. Mm-hmm. They're pretty much the same size because the rents have to be competitive. So the width and the depth of the units. I've been doing apartments for 30 years. They're very defined, and you have to respond to the marketplace.
But you can.
And so
you can change how the windows transmit light.
Right. So generally, the chassis are 30 feet deep, and a studio is 12 to 15 feet. A 1-bedroom is 20 to 24 feet, and a 3-bedroom is 30 to 36 feet. Each room gets a window or 2 if you're lucky.
Did you consider?
That's pretty much so. That's how I considered all those things.
Did you consider light shelves or something of that nature?
We don't really use light shelves in apartments. They work great in offices because you have screens, so the daylighting is very different. We didn't consider light shelves in the apartments.
Yeah. Okay, that's fine. And at the ground floor level, old people, have you ever driven through Miami Beach? It's all these old people sitting out on the stoop. There's life at the street level where they're sitting out. And I saw Agatha at all that sort of stuff happens at the street level. And this has none of that. And it would be so easy to add.
So I think you're talking about stoop unit, ground floor residential at the first floor.
No, just a place to really, for instance, the pass-through that you have through the building is so narrow, it's really a hallway. Well, what if you could develop that into sort of a stoop type thing where old people could kibitz?
Well, we will have that ability, and the storefronts wrap in. Mm-hmm. I wanted to get back to, I think it was asked a few times, and I just wanted to say, in other planning departments, there are codes that define what's an active use. And an active use is something that has ground floor activities where the entrances are at the ground and it's active. So it can be retail, it can be a bike shop, it can be the bike room to the building, it can be amenities where people are actively using that ground floor. Or if it's residential, it's 3 feet up with a stoop so that you have privacy and your windows can be open, you can sit on your stoops. So other communities do it in terms of a linear length around the building. So if you have a sidewalk around 3 sides of the building, 75% of it would be storefront and active uses, something like that, rather than area, because
but didn't they say that the storefront is problematic because it doesn't pencil out? The commercial part?
I don't understand. What's the question?
We have so much retail that was a consideration of why you didn't do lot 6.
I didn't say anything about lot 6. Oh, okay. The owner said something about that.
Okay.
I was talking about having storefronts wrapping the entire ground floor.
All I'm saying is I think I would recommend, and this is just, maybe I'm not supposed to recommend anything. I'm new to this game, as I said, but it seems to me that some greater study about this facade, for instance, why did you change all these colors? It seems very arbitrary, and so there's not a concept there to me. So, for instance, you had said it's crescent shaped. Well, one of the great historical precedents is the Royal Crescent at Bath, which is a crescent. Did you think about how to do that?
Well, what we thought about and what we got comments from staff where to break the building down, it's a long facade, even though it wraps corners. So it was to break it down into several buildings.
Yeah.
And I know looking at it tonight, it might seem arbitrary, but I met with Basin Street. I've worked with this particular site with 5 different developers.
Yeah.
The one tonight is the only one who could come with a project that penciled.
Right.
And we've been working on the architecture of all those other projects for many, many years, probably 5 or 6 years. And we're very, very pleased with what we came up with. I think it's going to be great.
You had said that the corner of the Basin Street property, and I think everybody pretty well, it's not the most gorgeous building ever, but it's very nice. And
which project are you talking about?
The Theater Square thing.
Theater Square. Yeah.
And it has that sort of round corner. It marks the corner. This thing sort of slithers around the corner.
I was the architect for that project. And
that's nice.
And I went to the movies there this weekend with my family.
I like it very much. Congratulations.
Barbenheimer.
But I don't see that here.
It's a different site. That's in the historic district, and we were making a lot of nods to the historic district.
But what's particularly nice in the Theater Square is that you go through it and you end up at a place that's actually nice to go.
The courtyard. I think the courtyard here is going to be the central green when Building 6 is done. That's how I see it.
Uh-huh.
And so we need to get one of these done, show that it works, and get Lot 6 built.
Well, I've spent enough time. Can you just show that one study where the townhouses were next to this building?
I'm not sure which slide you're
I think it was the fly. It may have been the fly-through, and it's actually townhouses are next to Lot 6, not next to Lot 5.
Was it this one, Mr.
Is it that one?
Commissioner Kelly? Is it this?
It's when you go around the corner. I think it's like. Here's the thing.
So those are the townhouses right there on the left.
Okay.
And then these.
This is the proposed office that might be housing, and then the hotel.
That's the hotel on the
built.
right. Yep. The central green is straight
and
ahead.
There's your building.
Right.
So look at the difference in height there. Could you make a gesture on the facade that which would acknowledge that there are some lower buildings there, so that you have, I don't know, a cornice or something?
That makes sense. Keep in mind. We're doing a movie. It's okay. You're fine. I think we can keep it in our mind's eye. There's going to be a building similar to this one built on Lot 6 that's going to block that view.
Yes, and
so
since we don't know what's going to happen to Lot 6, what if they decide to do a zigzag?
They can do a zigzag. It would come to you guys. It's T6, so it has to pretty much follow the lot line. Those are the rules. You kind of have to follow the lot line, right? And build a street wall, not setback. So I don't think a zigzag would meet the T6. A building roughly of this shape would make the T6. 3 stories or more, I think. Yeah. So you're going to have roughly the same shape if you follow the T6.
Yeah. So I think, when I say study the facade, if you could maybe carry that line of the townhouses through so that I'm going to end with a German word, Gesamtkunstwerk, which means altogether artwork. That's what these sites should be. They should be Gesamtkunstwerk. It shouldn't be one thing here and another thing there and another thing there.
Yeah. That's stuff with the system that we have, but I hear what you're saying.
Yeah, but you can always respond by...
Well, I guess what I'm saying is the townhomes, I don't want to respond to those because there's going to be another T6 building there that's going to cover those up. That's going to be 3 or 4 stories high.
Right.
So that's what I'm responding to now before it's built, if you see what I mean.
Mm. But yeah, perception and human focus is what's so important, especially for old people.
I agree. Thank you for your comments.
Mm-hmm.
Well, thank you very much, Commissioner. It is your first time, but quite impactful.
I hope I didn't go on too long.
Oh, you did great. Vice Mayor Cater-Thompson.
Well, I actually watched when this project was being developed, and I also did, I think, Blake, did you ever go on my transportation tours? I would make people get in my car, and I would drive them around town, and I would show them where deficiencies were and what we should really be doing. I think, Dave, you were probably on one of them, stuff with 5 people in the car that day. I came down to this area all the time because, and before the homes were built, so the grid streets were coming in, And you knew darn well there was going to be problems here because you were trying to integrate. We definitely need Caulfield because there's a great connection there, and I think it'll be more bike and pedestrian, which is going to be fantastic. But there's going to be traffic going down that road, and I was there today, and this is not a roundabout when we're talking about this. All of a sudden we have a civic area. That is not a civic area. That is an area where cars drive around, and we're kind of pretending that cars are not going to be heavy in this area. And I'm going to lighten everybody tonight, enlighten you, and say there's going to be traffic in there. Mm-hmm. And that's why you have 3 lit crossings on each street. And that is to slow people down so people will not be killed in this area. And then you go into what we're the pretend roundabout. And then we have like a pretend area that is actually integrated public space. How are you going to get there? I mean, I'm sorry. I live on a 64-foot road, Rainier, and we're trying to do that a road diet just so you can walk across that road. Mm-hmm. And I cannot see a senior citizen active in this particular area. And I'm going to go back to what I said at the beginning. Because I mean, I like that I connected, with the developers and the proponents of this project. But I honestly did not realize that this is just in the wrong space in that site. If I lived in there, that is not what I would want to have in my neighborhood. It belongs on the southeast side. And that's where it really belongs. And you could, in my opinion, if you did the southeast side, but stay around away from these 2 properties are very problematic. And I don't like the past, and I don't like to look at tomorrow. I like to look 20 to 30 years out, and that's what I'm looking at. And I'm seeing 20 to 30 years out, and there's going to be, there's one way in and one way out right now. And that project was approved, and all of those uses were approved without proper access in and out. Yes, Caulfield is in the general plan. They never planned on doing Caulfield. They were just going to have a single lane in and a single lane out. And so it's not really about this project particularly. It's about the whole site. And I can't sit here as a representative, even though you have districts, you represent everybody. And would you want that in your neighborhood? And I just feel as though we are trying to approve something that is in the wrong location. And as far as when you talk about, I didn't realize that you were the architect for Basin Street for the theater district. Well, that should have been really expansive. So when you drove by, you could actually see what was in there. And it's not. It's like a little cut, and nobody knows what's inside. You have to go there and walk around. And that's what I see with this cut through is it's dark. It doesn't feel inviting, and you're not seeing anything. And it's kind of the same architecture that really was problematic even getting the theater district moving, to be successful. And it hasn't been 100% successful. I think I'm just going to stick. I don't particularly like the architecture in this. It looks just like, you drive in, it looks just like the hotel. There's no differentiation at all, except some facades. But there's really no differentiation. I mean, it looks like the hotel. And I've spent a lot of time in this area, and I spent a lot of time today. And I am really glad I drove down there, because when you're talking about how you get across that roundabout by the hotel, we should know that. We should know that before we're in these seats to know exactly what we're dealing with. And that's why I drove to Berkeley. And I think the project in Berkeley really fits well in Berkeley. I'm just not sure if it fits on this site. As a matter of fact, I don't think it fits on this site. And I don't know why we take people down a rabbit hole before actually maybe having the discussion, is this the right site? And that is not something that I want to see applicants go through. I came in, you know, I had a completely different feeling until I really went down and I looked at where that property was. And with that, we'll just go to the next section.
I
If
was
that's
actually,
okay.
No, I was actually going to say, I made a mistake. I need to actually open it up to public comment before we continue. That was my error. So I'm going to open now to public comment. I've already got a card, but if you would like to give a comment, please provide your card up front. And were there any comments that were provided ahead of this meeting on this particular item?
Yes, I just want to make a correction from a comment I made earlier. There were no general public comments provided to us prior to the meeting, nor were they posted online. The one item that you do have before you and that was posted online was specifically for this project.
Got it. Thank you. And with that, we will begin with Ashmi. I apologize if I messed that up.
Thank you for having us here today and for this fantastic discussion. My name is Ashmi Chokshi, and I'm a resident of the Riverfront community you all are discussing. And I want to share with you what this community is like really quickly. You've seen a lot of blueprints. You've seen pictures that were taken probably 4 years ago when none of the houses were built. I've taken the liberty, please excuse me for doing that, to send some of you and the Planning Commission some pictures from now. This is already a vibrant, multi-generational community. My mother lives with me. There are kids in the neighborhood. There are pets. You know, people are walking around. We walk to each other's driveways and have a conversation. There's Halloween happening. This project, while in concept with the retail and supporting the elderly, which frankly I'm like, oh, maybe I can go live there in 20 years, is great. But the density that the applicant is suggesting without parking, without any kind of traffic controls. Thank you, Vice Mayor, for visiting us. And the height, which is so far above all the surroundings, thank you for mentioning that in the architecture, is ruining what we're creating as a community. We're all here because we love the spaciousness, the rural aspect, the culture, and the charm that Petaluma has. We want newer communities to have that too, including Riverfront. It cannot be that those are the dense, like fill people in and let them be, right? So please help us have, I mean, there's 70 independent units and 36 parking spots? There's going to be at least 35 cars there. I lived in San Mateo next to a senior living facility. At least half of them had cars, in spite of there being a bus and a designated driver. The Vice Mayor has said this. It is a one-lane road with parking next to it. That is not the semi-highway you all want to create, and not for seniors. I walk there every day. There is no crossing. I'm sorry, there's no crossing. The green is behind, and most importantly, folks, the plan calls for trash and parking right next to the Todd playground. I'm sorry, what? So yes to retail, yes to seniors, no to 4 floors, no to no parking, and please consider the traffic. So thank you, and please come visit us. We're a newer community. You're going to make a lot of decisions for us. Come see us. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Next we have Dave.
Thank you. I want to talk a little, just for a moment, about 15-minute neighborhoods, which has become a city goal, and recognize that this project, Riverfront, not just this project tonight, but the whole Riverfront project, was a decade ahead of its time. It was a 15-minute neighborhood when we didn't even know that phrase. But what we're seeing tonight is a continuation of the gradual whittling away of that concept. I think what the developer's done here is what he's proposing is fairly nice. I'm not an architect, so I'm not going to debate that with Commissioner Kelly. But this might be the nicest senior living facility in Petaluma. It's a low bar, but I think he's done a reasonable job with it. But with a number of residents who will never leave their units or never leave the building, with a small amount of commercial area. It just gradually whittles away on the 15-minute concept. The problem is, and I'm not sure problem is the right word, we have a vision. Petaluma has a vision of what we want this town to be in 2035, 2040, walkable, neighborhood retail. And what the developer's telling us, and he's certainly not the only one to be telling us this, is the development community just can't put funding together in 2023 for that vision. I don't know how we reconcile the fact that we want our town to become something better, more climate resilient than it is today, and the development community can't get there today, but that is truly the problem we're facing. Given that, I'm going to make one request that's completely out of the box, but what the heck, that's what I do sometimes. The developer in his program talks about having a bus that will take residents to destinations around Petaluma. I think that's great. I've had a lot of relatives in senior facilities. They love those bus trips. I get that. But over the last couple of months, couple of years actually, I've been talking regularly with Oyster Cove and 500 Hopper Street about the fact that we need a city shuttle serving those projects. Short headway city shuttle, so they don't need as much parking, so it's easier for people to hop on a bus, get to the transit facilities, get downtown, get back home again. And that shuttle really needs to extend into Riverfront so more people can leave their car in the garage all day. I'm going to ask that if the city ever puts together a shuttle program, and I chair the shuttle committee or the transit committee, so I have this conversation regularly. If we ever put that together, I would like this developer to the extent he can't, shut down his bus program and take the money that he would have spent on that and give it to the city to help make a city shuttle come together. And we have senior citizens riding that shuttle downtown with other Riverfront, 500 Hopper Street, Oyster Cove residents, which I think is really consistent with the vision we have for this community. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Now we have Danielle.
I'm not very tall. Excuse me. My name is Danielle, and I am also a resident in the Riverfront community. Ashmi is my neighbor. We come together. This is actually my third Planning Commission meeting. I will be here a lot because I want to represent my neighborhood. And what I love about my neighborhood is community. We've created community. My husband's retired. I'm still partially working. My neighbor across the street, she has 3 small-ish children. There's a few other retired people in the community. Like Ashmi said, her mom lives in the community, so we do have seniors. We have a very vibrant community. It's not that we're opposed to seniors at all, but we are opposed to the density, the lack of parking. Trees are nice. We love trees. We would definitely love more trees. And while I do appreciate how the applicant is talking about the green is not open. It's been sitting there, fenced off for what seems like 6 months. So when will it be open? When will the fountains attached to it be working? The Tot Park, I kid you not, is less than a quarter of the size of this room. It is so small that it barely serves the community for which it was built. There's no benches, there's nothing around this green. So if you want people to be at that green, there's nothing there. There's no soccer post, there's no basketball hoops, there's no nothing. It's just a giant patch of grass sitting empty. So that's one problem. Parking, I mentioned. What we're concerned about our neighborhood is if you put retail there and if you put, I don't know how many units of housing there, all the people that need to park and be there are going to come into our neighborhood. And that's just, parking is, we don't want to turn this into a San Francisco Sunset District where there's parking just everywhere in front of everybody's houses and you can't park in front of your own house. That's a problem. The other problem is traffic. Absolutely. We do know that when the bridge opens, it's going to be insanity, just traffic-wise. Caulfield's going to turn into just a major thoroughfare, whatever you want to call it. Yes, there are stop signs. Nobody's really stopping at them at the moment, but they do, they're there. Anyway, thank you so much for your time. And I just want to let you know that we're very happy in this neighborhood. We're not opposed to seniors. We're opposed to density and lack of parking and lack of open space, usable open space. Thank you.
Chair, just for clarity, if I may, the green the last speaker was referring to is the active park, the ball fields. Those, because of the irrigation moratorium, the turf was not installed until fairly recently. They're still under the establishment period, so the roots can be established. And so once that establishment period is up, it'll be open to the public.
Thank you very much for the clarification. We have one more comment from Cynthia.
Thanks so much for this meeting this evening. It was really interesting to see the whole process, so I really am glad I got to come today. My name is Cindy, and I have lived in Petaluma since about 1975, so been here a long time. Love this town, and lived most of my adult life here. I also now live in Riverfront, so it's a fantastic place to live. I just love it. And there are a few things I did want to express my concerns about for things that I've heard tonight. One, first, I think it's fantastic that at least some of you have actually been to our neighborhood. That means you did make the drive into our neighborhood, which is it's kind of interesting. So you come in, and we're talking about a little bit of an alleyway. When my husband and I talk about our neighborhood, we refer to the alleyway, which is the narrow little, it is technically probably 2 lanes, but it's a very narrow street getting into our neighborhood. But that's not all. I'm a great COTS advocate. All the years I've lived here, I have supported COTS. We have the Mary Isaac Center right near our neighborhood. It's great. But what that does mean is there are people that situate themselves along this narrow alleyway during the day. And, these are people that are in a great struggle. Some of them may be dealing with substance abuse. I'm just going to say that as a healthcare professional, I'm not stereotyping people, but I know that that can be an issue for some of the homeless people. But you know what? If I didn't have a home, I'd probably have a struggle just really being sharp every day. These are the folks that are kind of sitting along this narrow alleyway getting into our neighborhood. They have grocery carts with or probably what are their only belongings. And when I drive into my neighborhood, that means I'm going into this narrow alleyway, and I'm worried that I'm going to hit somebody that might accidentally step into the street. So one thing I really want to appreciate, Commission Member McCurlane, we're focusing on traffic and the flow through our neighborhood. I think that's a really important point to really please focus on. I do think there might be some plans for an alternate route going through Caulfield coming into the neighborhood. I'm not sure. But if the thinking is that that little narrow alleyway is going to facilitate traffic going through our neighborhood and ultimately going through this large building or by the large building and then over the bridge, that's going to be a real problem. So I really would like to ask that each one of you, if you haven't already driven through there during the day, would you please do so you can get appreciation for what that traffic flow is really like. I've got 14 seconds. I'll just say that I also have been a soccer mom. I look at that green field, and I don't think there's enough parking places if we have soccer games going on, this business going on. We got a hotel there. I can't help but think people are going to seep into our neighborhood to park. And, okay, thank you. Thanks very much.
Thank you very much. And with that, I will close public comment, and we will get back to commissioner comment and discussion. I have a suspicion that I know where this is maybe going to go in terms of a motion, but it is helpful overall to get everyone's feedback for the applicant. So I'd like us to continue going through discussion before we hit the motion. Commissioner Weissman, you were next. Do you have any points for discussion, sir?
For a comment?
Yes.
Oh, sure. Okay, so I guess I'd start off by recognizing it is a very challenging site. So certainly sympathetic to the applicant or anybody who want to take on the challenge of building something usable on this site because of just the space that's been already planned and approved for this. That said, I think the strongest element of this project is the senior living facility and the ability to offer the community an age-in-place type of community that is sorely needed in this area, and I think even across our region more broadly. So I'm looking myself for every opportunity to support that type of usage in our community. I think it will add. I understand from the community comments that there already is a pretty vibrant and multi-generational community there, and I think adding to that is only an asset to both that neighborhood as well as the larger city. I do hear plenty of pros and cons with regards to the density, but I do appreciate the applicants actually increasing the height of the building to 4-story relative to what we've seen before in order to achieve more density and get more of that senior living that I'm in favor of at the site. So in this context and in the space that's provided and with this immediately surrounding buildings, I do think that 4-story is an asset, not a detraction. I also like the idea of the tuck-in parking underneath. Again, very challenging site to be able to provide parking. That's just what it is. You can't invent any other solution to that other than going subterranean. But I think the tuck-in parking allows the site as much parking as possible, and also avoiding a heat island effect from just a large traditional parking lot. So I do appreciate that element on the site. With regards to traffic, again, it's an element of where the site is right now. I do notice from what I can see is there are stop signs at each entrance to that oval. I guess rather than so it's not your traditional traffic circular dynamic. I think that'll be much more controlled and allow for a safer crossing for pedestrians, be they members of this development or others. I do appreciate the applicant's addition of both the rooftop deck and the deck over the portico. That is something that I advocated in the previous one. I think other commissioners did as well. So I'm glad that element has been added to allow the seniors, especially the memory care ones who don't have the ability to go outside, to have some exposure to the outdoors. I would say one criticism I have of the architecture going into the kind of the spar elements is I think the neighborhood would benefit from a little bit more variety on the facade, whether it's color, whether it's design elements, windowsill, planters, whatever, just something to break up the mass and bring a little bit more, I think, kind of softness and delightful features to the facade there. So in all, I think it's an improvement. I think the only disappointment I see relative to what we've seen before is the loss of lot 6 or parcel 6. I wish we had more, but I'm content with what we have. It's not a perfect development, but I think there isn't a way to get a perfect development in the space that's there and the geometry that's there. But for those reasons and others, I'm inclined to support the project. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Commissioner Atkinson?
Yeah, thank you, Chair. So, I wrote at the top here, I have a struggle in, the current private property system on trying to decide via a SPAR process the suitability of a proposed use at a site. Is it our call to say that senior living is or isn't appropriate? Is that asked of us, or even is that a legitimate thing to ask during the SPAR process? And Eric, can you please tell us how we shoehorn that in there? Because it feels like we've marched down this approval process with the riverfront to where we are stuck with a lot of geometry, a traffic layout that we're all finding problems with now and ostensibly should have been found at the time. Now, can we pick suitability of a project based on those external factors the applicant doesn't control? I mean, is that something we can make our decision based off of here?
Thanks for the question, Commissioner Rakusin. So, few things. One is, the main overall job of the Planning Commission is to implement the policy choices that the council has already made that are reflected in the various planning documents, general plan, zoning ordinance, central Petaluma specific plan, smart code, as they apply to projects that come before you, recognizing that you're not a legislative body like the council is in terms of setting policy, you're a recommending body. The other thing that is one of the duties of the Planning Commission is, and sometimes it can be a trying one, is you can inherit partially entitled projects like this one. And we are all obligated to respect and preserve those entitlements that have been granted already, while maximizing your ability to continue to help ensure that those projects best reflect and best implement these planning documents that are guiding you and, the permitted uses that they allow, and are responsive to some of the concerns you hear that you bring as community members and you hear from other community members. So, and we're here to help you all strike that balance. But so the entitlements they have are entitlements that they get to keep and that you need to work within, and we do too. And the question is what's left. That's why I made some of those remarks I did earlier about circulation is fair game, but not requiring map changes because those are approved already. So that's my answer. And as you drill down and as your colleagues drill down, we'll do the best we can to help. Thanks.
Okay. And I just wanted to get that out there because it is always a tough decision to try to separate, what we're looking at on a project by project basis, what problems we have with an overall design, especially when we're talking about a big development, and how we can make our decisions with that. I guess a question for staff, the CEQA performed for Riverfront as an overall development in 2014. Do we think that adequately characterized traffic from the Caulfield Bridge as it's designed today? Because if there were design changes in the interim, we're still in the design phase, but do we feel like that CEQA adequately captured those traffic impacts? Because CEQA is something we're being asked to decide on today.
So in the cumulative section of the EIR for the Riverfront project, the bridge was part of that analysis. It didn't, I don't know that it got into the, traffic detail level of analysis in terms of turning movements and so on, and that was all analyzed by the city engineer when the Riverfront tentative map was considered and approved. But the traffic issues that are looked at under CEQA were analyzed in the cumulative section, cumulative impact section of the Riverfront EIR.
Right, and obviously if you had found something jarringly different about the current design, we would have to discuss that the bridge was appreciably, going to be much higher volume than anticipated or something like that.
Yeah, the roadway network hasn't changed. The overall build-out numbers haven't changed. So all of that has remained static.
And the other part of this I want to point out is we're right now going through the Skinnell property, and ostensibly there's going to be a leg of road that comes off and shunts some traffic before we get to this traffic circle. So it won't be just a point A, point B across the bridge. This won't be 100% of the traffic. So I do want to point that out. I think for me, it starts to come down to both architectural considerations, but also just deciding whether this achieves the promise of mixed use in this area, in this T6 zone, intense use. And I think we do have tangible metrics. I know we were asking that, but I think we do when we just look to our existing zoning laws for mixed use in the rest of the city. And that's as close as we can get, because in T6, this use isn't defined. So the next place I go is other zoning codes throughout the city, and mixed use 1A, 1B, and 2, and mixed use 2 all say that residential care facilities are okay mixed use if they're above the ground floor or if they're not street fronting uses. So in trying to be as objective as possible, that becomes a metric I look at to say, okay, are we achieving what we want with a mixed use, vibrant community, again, to make this not only a space that's financially viable and that serves kind of some of these other benefits of this intergenerational blending, but also serves as the centerpiece of this overall proposed development that was kind of the community square engagement storefront centerpiece. And we really want to make sure that we're achieving that. And I appreciate the architect giving us the realities of what ground floor activation means in some other communities, but we have to use the rules that we have here. So I do love the idea of giving a nod in terms of height. Height is coming up a lot recently. It's going to be something we have to deal with. And I think architectural tools, if there are any in the tool bag, they give a nod to surrounding heights. If this is the density and height we need to go to, I think that would be an essential part of this process. Something I didn't get into with the internal design was, again, just moving things around. And this was so part of my kind of final comment here is, I know for you guys, this is multiple times bringing this project. I know there's a funding deadline. This is definitely a new iteration, a pretty big departure from what we've seen till now with some back and forth. And now we're limited to one building. In my mind, I would love to move to continue this. And again, this may not be practical, but I'll just lay out my perfect scenario, is to engage the riverfront community. I know there was a public meeting, I believe, in September of 2022. And actually, I should ask, in September 2022, was this the concept that was shown? It said 3 residents showed up virtually. But was this the concept that was shown, or was it the 5 and 6 concept that was submitted in May of that year?
It was the 5 and 6. It was lot 5 and 6. They did not submit just lot 5 until actually the formal submittal was in June.
I think it would be wise to give the community, and more this is proving effective, is to give community feedback on this concept, but also go to work on some of the items that have been mentioned tonight. Looking at that ground floor, again, I laid out a metric that I was using, which is how do we apply kind of our standards of mixed use elsewhere in the city to make this be a strong argument for, yes, this meets tier 6 mixed use because this looks like mixed use that we do in Petaluma. With that may take moving things around, and just looking at the interior design, that may mean like the 3rd and 4th stories have almost no communal space for some of those residents. And do we sacrifice some of those units to make communal space there and sacrifice some first floor resident only space to be that commercial space to, again, give this a strong grounding in some of the mixed use principles we use here? Now that takes, more complicated financial calculations and modeling to see if that would work. I think that would also improve the quality of life. I was going to get into a whole tirade on that, but it's not part of the SPAR process, was making sure that this integrates, and you guys are in this industry, so I can't preach to you, but integrates all the design concepts for a successful residential care facility. I really want to see that integrated. So I think, taking feedback like that, how do we modify that first floor to be more commercial use? How do we make more communal space on some of those upper floors to serve those residents? How can we look at that rooftop space to provide some of the open space that is critical for folks' mental health, well-being? If, that Central Park, I agree. I don't really see that. I know it might have been intended as, the Central Park for lot 5 and 6. I don't really see it functioning that way. So I would love to try to leverage any space we have, like a rooftop space, to be green space for residents. I think there are other tweaks you can do with surface features on the exterior of the building, not necessarily living walls, but there are things you can do to kind of break up that feel of the facade there and not take all of our design notes from that hotel. Again, that is part of the neighborhood, but you have a chance to really set a character of this part of the neighborhood. So yeah, that would be, and I won't make the motion now, we can go around the room here, but that would be my proposal for this, is to continue this item, have some community engagement, and also for the CEQA considerations, I would like us to use the newest 2022 Bay Area Air Quality, CEQA Air Quality Guidelines, or at least look at them compared to the air quality and greenhouse gas assessment prepared by the applicant's consultant, and see if that changes anything. See if there are different thresholds. Before we're the primary party on signing the addendum, I just want to make sure we're using all the most up-to-date thresholds and guidelines. So yeah, that's my opinion on the project. I appreciate what the developer's working with this lot, funding deadlines. I appreciate that they're trying to develop a space that is incredibly difficult to develop. But I think because we're coming with a pretty new concept along this pretty long chain of events, I think it's worth taking some of this feedback, working at workshopping it, see what can work, and also hold community workshops, especially now that we're more in person than ever, and engage what is clearly an engaged riverfront community, and see if there's some ideas that pop up there. That would be my proposal, but that's all my comments. Thanks.
Thank you. Commissioner Bauer.
Thank you very much, Chair. I remember when this came in front of us before, and we approved the use for there to be a residential care facility there. And so I feel like, there's no going back on that now for me anyway. But, at the time, I don't think I really realized the traffic that was going to be involved there. And now thinking about a senior living facility with that much traffic seems a little scary to me. But that being said, I'm not going to say that it can't work, but that I feel like this unit, and now with 5 and 6 being gone, that we're kind of really veering away from what this area was intended to be, which was supposed to be like, the center of this whole community. And I feel like it's kind of being commandeered by the senior living facility now, with only a small percentage of it now dedicated to public use. And I just feel like that wasn't really what the intention was when we created this master plan many, many years ago. And, that I feel like there's really the activation of that green area, the greenway in between, that really needs to be thought out. I just feel like there's still a lot of missing holes here that needs to be filled. And I'm not going to say no right now, but I'm not going to say yes either, I think. I don't have a problem with the EIR. I don't have a problem with the warrants. It's the SPAR and, how this senior living facility fits into what's supposed to look like and what the community is supposed to be there, and how it's all everybody's gonna work together. Furthermore, I think that there needs to be a little bit more thought into the articulation of the building. It's just one big mass and flat, and it's really not very, it doesn't feel like a home to me. And I feel like that's what the people that live there in the future deserve. They deserve it to feel like a home. And it just seems kind of a little bit barren with, this stark kind of not really colorful and just, kind of sterile building a look to it. And I like something a little bit more warm and home feeling. And I'd also like to have more front uses, like Commissioner Kelly was saying, like people, if this is going to be a senior living facility, people are going to want to hang out on the street, the community is going to want to hang out here. This is supposed to be the neighborhood hangout, I think, kids and young adults and senior citizens all being in here together. And I feel like it's just not there. It doesn't look like a place like you want to hang out yet. But I'm hoping we could get there eventually. I'm hoping this area could be there, and how to figure that out with the amount of traffic that's going through, I think that's a challenge. So I don't think all those questions have been answered yet. So I'm not ready to pull the plug on to say yes yet until we figure some of those questions out. So that's all of my comments right now. thank you very much for wanting to build in our community. And I know we're being a little difficult, but this is our community, and we want to do it right. So thank you for your patience.
These projects have historically been pretty difficult for us, especially when it comes to this broader Rivertown master plan. And part of the problem is these are all interlinked. I think my second or third project on the Planning Commission was for some of the homes that, folks are here today for. And I remember at that time, it was so hard to fathom what they were all going to look like, how they were going to interact, what the different densities were going to look like. And I think one thing we have to be mindful of is we have developments that are there now, we have homes, we have a community that's there, and we have to be nimble to what those changes look like and how those things interact. We've talked a lot about traffic. Part of why I asked the question of staff about protection when it came to crossing these motor vehicle thoroughfares, and I wasn't trying to be glib about time travel, but part of why I asked that question was to get at the point that we have, to a certain degree, committed to a plan that has a lot of roadways. Yes, we're asking for bus transit. Yes, we want to see pedestrian bicycle access, but a lot of these folks are going to have cars. So if we hope to minimize traffic, mixed use becomes critical. If there's any trip that folks in those neighborhoods can take on foot compared to a car, it eases the burden, which means every inch of mixed use and every inch of commercial, which on other projects, I've ignored commercial almost entirely, but for this area, every inch of that's going to be critical. If you have to walk over to Lucky's, I'm guessing you won't. I don't even have to look up. I'm guessing you won't. I'm guessing you'll take a car. So if there's no grocery store for milk in the middle of the night, you're doomed. Heck, I used to live across from the 7-Eleven that was referenced earlier when I lived in Theater Square Apartments. I also did my laundry there, by the way. Great laundromat. And I remember I was so grateful. Yeah, it was overpriced milk, but I was so grateful that I could at least take a walk over there at midnight for something compared to having to drive all the way onto the east side of town to Safeway, since I think that's the only thing open past that late. So with that in mind, I had a hard time looking at the design for this. I can see why you'd want facilities on the first floor. I can understand the value of senior living in that regard. And we don't have a lot of great facilities for senior living in Petaluma, so I can see the need. That being said, agreeing with what Vice Mayor Thompson said, this whole area doesn't seem like the right fit for what this project is trying to do. Like I fixated right away on the T6 zoning. It's the highest density we allow in the city. There's not a lot of T6 zoning citywide. I spent some time sifting through Argus just to confirm, and we don't have a lot of opportunities for that. Now, I will say heights, it's increasingly part of the discussion. I would not advocate to lower height. That may not be something people love, but this area was specifically designed for a higher height, with a higher height in mind. That being said, this area was also designed for higher mixed-use activity and engagement. So that is one issue I have with how this is set up. I don't think you can just add a restaurant and maybe one or two other shops and call it a day. Vibrant engagement is a lot more than that, and I think we're going to have to really lock into the vision, as Dave commented, really lock into the vision that we committed to for this. On the design, I lived in Theater Square. I love that Theater Square looked at the past but kept the future in mind. I really wish you had kept that for this. And I'm not trying to double down, and I appreciate how kind and gracious you've been with us through all of this. But I also bumped into the overall look of it. When I was looking at the top, I kept thinking, well, you can add I don't know the term, but the fake roof siding and try and make it look a little less imposing. I think there are ways to make this look a little more vibrant, more colorful, and probably more accent pieces, and a little less stuck in what feels like an office park at times. I'm just trying to be sincere on the design front. On the traffic circulation issue, I was lucky enough to be able to work from home last week. So having remembered exactly the tour that you took me on, I went and took a few drives over there because I realized I hadn't been there since homes had propped up. And I went at noon, I went in the morning, and I went when I'd be coming back from work. So I was hit like 4 to 5 on a few different days. It was dreadful at times, the amount of traffic that having to circulate through there. So this roundabout, which I don't know if it really, this mini soccer field that we have in the middle of this project, this will absolutely be dreadful for seniors trying to cross the street. This will be dreadful for most people trying to cross the street, because I know if I'm coming back from work, I'm not exactly paying attention. Most people aren't paying attention, and they're gonna have to slow down. I don't think that is a problem for the applicant per se. It does start to become an issue once you're thinking about senior living. And the issue I come into is I don't want to be quite as dramatic as Commissioner Kelly in this regard, but I don't want this to be a place where seniors go and they feel trapped. I want to make sure that if we're going to have these facilities right in the center, then they have to feel like they can connect. And that might be a larger issue with the plan of the site that has to be addressed fundamentally. But that I also bumped into that with the design. With regards to CEQA, I would also agree with Commissioner Rakusin that updated standards are critical. I think if it's the same owner or applicant for lots 5 and 6, I have an issue with piecemeal addendums. I get that it's probably legal and acceptable. It feels like starting it from like a regulatory perspective, it feels like we're starting in one place, we're going to go to the next, and then we're going to go retroactively back to the first. If everything works out and it's what we expect, that's great. But that's only if it's what we expect. And given that we're probably giving them a lot of grief over what they've proposed so far, I expect things will probably change. So if it's going to be the same applicant for both lots, I would have grave concerns about doing addendums for just one subdivided lot this way.
The addendum addresses both lots.
I recognize it addresses both lots, but we have yet to see designs for the second lot, so I'm not counting that as real. That's what I'm trying to tell you.
Okay. Well,
it's not real. We don't have it. We haven't seen it. That's not your fault. That's not their fault. Yeah. But to this situation, it's addendum to one lot when we know we're going to get new designs and new plans for the next. And then, ironically, the warrants of this were the thing that I love less parking. Thank you. And trying to bring down parking needs in the city, and the width was not an issue. But similar to others, I'm not saying no, but I'm not saying yes. I would also want to move for continuance to a date uncertain for this. And I will move on for our next. Commissioner.
Thank you. Chair, I hope at the end of this you're going to be able to summarize a direction for the applicant, because he's getting a lot of different.
Absolutely.
Okay. Conceptually speaking, I think a walkable mixed-use community, as the concept was established, sounds attractive. It's a residential hub, higher density hub. The idea of an urban iconic roundabout with a dense mixed use surrounding it may have been attractive back in 2014 when the City Council approved it, 2021 when the Planning Commission approved the master plan. And I appreciate the attorney's comment on that we've all inherited a project that's been a long time in the process. So some of this is not fair to the applicant, but it's also, we have to feel good about what we're approving. Creating a walkable development by locating the parking a distance from a commercial access point behind the store, or I have to agree, it does create the need to walk a further distance. But it seems to me like you're creating difficulty for the potential tenant, the commercial manager in the store. On top of all this, we put a crosstown connector through the middle of it. Carrying traffic through the middle of this pedestrian-focused urban core is concerning to me, and it's been concerning to others. And we don't know really what that traffic is. I can't really get an answer. What's the traffic? This is part of a specific plan. The whole specific plan is supposed to be done as a specific plan with traffic roads established. That was not done. river front was built, but the rest of the plan was not defined. So how the traffic flows from Canal into riverfront has not been determined. It's proposed that they all link together. I'm not sure that's been thought out well. So there's a lot of traffic issues, I think, that need to get tightened up and qualified, because we don't know really what we're approving. I can't make a decision without knowing information. It would be not responsible. I'm also aware that architectural comments, I think it's very drab, unfriendly, flat, blank, very blank kind of characteristics. Modern architecture has sort of developed into something without character or style. The hotel is not great architecture reference. I think the Theater Square is much better. I think some of the ingredients that Belmont Village has is better, but it's in Berkeley in a very urban, pedestrian-dominant streetscape. I think there's more articulation of the windows, maybe a sill or definition, but the windows now are just flat. And I understand there's depth considerations, but a protruding sill 6 inches out is the same as a recession of windows 6 inches in many ways. I think more colorful awnings on the ground floor, more pedestrian shade, and I think there should be a landscape plan as part of the submittal. What happens around the edge of the roadway? Those trees could be denser, it could be more shade for the pedestrians, it could create people places on the sidewalk. Somehow we need to make this a place that's attractive, not just an urban edge with a hard building wall. I think the landscape, lack of landscape around the back edge of the project as it interfaces with residential, and specifically for Lot 6 as it interfaces with all the townhouses, needs to be thought out. There needs to be a better landscape buffer, a back edge that interfaces with property that's next door. Okay, so I think given the above issues, I'm concerned that this project and the fact that we're only getting one lot of a two-lot solution concerns me, because I think it is a two-lot solution, or both 5 and 6 need to be defined. I think guidelines should be established for 5 that apply to 6. I think if there's a sale of the property, the guidelines go with the sale as part of the requirements, so that the buyer knows what he's getting into. But if it's just left open with no criteria, they buy that lot and say, I have a different idea, we go through a different process. And I think that would be a detriment to this process. So I think this, I think staff should review our options for conditioning lot 6 to be defined with some sort of guidelines or some sort of criteria that gives us assurance that we know what it's going to be or what direction it should be. And I think the guidelines should come from further definition of the architectural character of Lot 4. So I don't want to put the applicant at a disadvantage because my comments are new. We're all sort of new to a project that's it's unfair to the applicant, but we're dealing with the reality of we want a project that succeeds and it's attractive, and we have a responsibility to make sure that happens. So my sense is that we should continue it tonight with clear definition of what it is we want to see come back, including architectural design, but also further traffic information, further definition of what our comments have been. So those are my comments.
Commissioner?
Okay, well, I've probably said too much already, but I agree that I think that what Darren Ruckerson said is really germane. Two heads are better than one, and I know we have this thing where the architect of record is supposed to dream up everything, and if they don't get the input from the community and from maybe other design professionals. You know, when I was in the Public Building Service, we always had what we called a peer review. We had other professionals who said, have you considered this or that? And it was very collegial. I would really like to see something like that. I think this is architecturally, I think it's very fixable. But as it is now, you know, I think one of the things that people object to about, you say, modern architecture is that it has that long, continuous, boring line, which says office building. It says inhumanity. So I think there's a way of reducing the height. This is an old trick that the French started, you know, with mansard and a dormer type. You could lower it and give you much more of a homey kind of feel to it, rather than this kind of Emeryville kind of really stark line. So I would love to you know, follow that. I don't know if that can be done, but it seems to me we could probably fix this pretty quickly. Now, in terms of the architecture, in terms of the oval in the middle, see, I see that as, you know, there's a roundabout in my neighborhood. I don't walk directly across it. I walk around it. And I think trying to bring people, for one thing, when people coming around that roundabout, I think we need to have bollards at some, because you have the possibility of people really ramming into the building. But I think that there's a possibility of directing people not across the square, but around it, and have the oval kind of almost like a parterre or like a very formal kind of landscape that people can look down on, that these older people can look down on, but it's not necessarily a park where you play in because it's not really big enough. So it could be quite an elegant, I see this as possibly a very kind of classical kind of building that is consistent all the way around, because you have such a nice shape in that oval. You don't need to dream up all sorts of, you know, different colors and roof height differences and stuff. It'd be nice. Again, I direct you to the Royal Crescent in Bath, which is just a wonderful project. And it was built by a developer and a father and son. And it's basically, it's a crescent, and there's very little change across it, but it's absolutely magnificent because it emphasizes the shape, and you have a great shape here. So I think, you know, I don't think this is a lost cause by any stretch of the imagination. But I think we need to improve the architecture a bit, and I defer to what everybody has said about the other stuff, which is not my kind of bailiwick. I mean, it is, but you've said enough about that, and we agree. But, you know, architecture is my thing, you know. So there you go. So in terms of, I think it has a ways to go. I think it can be fixed. I'm a big optimist, but I wouldn't say, yes, we can go with it right now.
So you're saying as long as it's limestone, it'll work okay?
The what?
As long as it's limestone, it'll work okay?
No, we don't need to use limestone. I don't think we have much limestone here in California.
Well, thank you very much, Commissioner Kelly.
Yep.
With that in mind, Vice Mayor Kara Thompson.
I always like listening to everybody and the comments, and I really appreciated the comments that we heard. You know, I realized that, you know, this was approved a long time ago, and we're kind of where we're at. But the architecture really has to change, and I really like the idea of more of a crescent. You know, instead of trying to make something that isn't, and it's going to make it cleaner, and it's going to it's going to be more inviting when you're going driving by.
Right.
At this point, you're looking at just a garbly of a bunch of stuff.
Right.
And, I would rather see everything the same, but we could also consider like a living wall,
Yes.
which Friedman's has. And, once it really started going, I mean, it is beautiful there. And it's very, very nice. Other things, I guess, so are we going to be approving what the other lot is going to be designed? I mean, because if we are, I mean, it needs to be the same.
Yeah.
And I like the idea of the crescent because these are really weird lots.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, they're just, and and like I say, if I had my way, I would actually put it, further on the opposite side, and I'd rather go up more stories.
Yeah.
Because it is really what should have happened.
Honestly, yeah.
And here would have been different, but that's not where we're at.
Yeah.
So I think that's pretty important as far as the design and really looking at it and making it more modern and simplistic. As far as the restaurant below, I mean, is the restaurant below going to have a bar? I mean, what size is it? As far as, I don't really know what the size is, what this restaurant's going to be. It's going to be an indoor and then an outdoor. And when we're talking about interacting with the community, that would be a way of interacting with the community because you don't always go inside, because you have different tiers. I think, assisted living is important, but we have to understand, I mean, this is high-end assisted living.
Yeah.
And so, and that's what it's going to be.
Yeah. And can I just say one thing about the crescents? The site wouldn't take a full crescent, but you could have a crescent at either end and a straight piece in the middle with the access points underneath, like at Theater. And I think it'd be easier to build, frankly. But
I like that idea very much. As far as the traffic, I mean, the traffic is, we're going to have traffic calming, and there is traffic calming, there now. And the change in the road that was talked about earlier, that's not going to happen until the old wastewater plant is actually dismantled and moved. Yeah. And if that had been done originally like it was planned, you would have had a whole different grid. But we were working around constraints, and the developer just had the council, so they knew they had the votes. And so that's why we ended up where we're at today. We have to, let's just face what it is. And now we're cleaning up a mess. And I think the architecture is going to be one of the most important things. Are there like EV chargers, and why is there not solar on this project since we have this, big roof? I'm not sure why that's not being included. And also, EV chargers for cars, but also for bikes, because you can get really great trikes, and the facility can have those trikes that people can actually, use. And I just saw one yesterday, looked really, really cool. They're a lot smaller than they used to be. And so these are amenities that, you can bring to the residents. And I think that's important. The park is, I don't like the idea that, I think we need to really understand that the tot lot is right next to the garbage. And that just really is not acceptable. So I think that needs to be looked at, how that can change. The idea of ballards on the oval is really important because by the time Caulfield comes, you're going to want those ballards in case something happens. And I appreciate that being brought up. And we're going to have density in this area because that was the direction.
Yep.
It's just unfortunate where some of it's going to be, or how each lot was determined. So, with that, I'd like to continue this to another meeting, so we really can get an understanding and a good feel of the area and make the design the best for the public that lives there to interact. And I think that's very important. So that's my comments.
Commissioner Atkinson, are you going to make a motion for us?
I was going to make that motion. I just wanted to confirm with Andrew and staff that you had taken, because I know that was rapid fire, a lot of feedback, some relevant to the project, some kind of urban design wish list stuff. Do we have a good sense of feedback we can give them so we're not just continuing into a abyss here, but we have tangible?
I've got 6 pages of notes.
Okay. Okay, so we feel we captured some things that were brought up as elements that could move them forward.
Yes.
Okay. So yeah, then I'll make a motion to continue the item. And I guess would we do a time indeterminate, time indefinite at this point? A date uncertain. Okay, I'll move the item to a date uncertain to come back for this SPAR and SPAR approval and EIR addendum.
Do we have a second?
I'll second it.
Thank you, Commissioner Kelly. Clerk, could we do a roll call vote?
Commissioner Bauer?
Yes.
Commissioner Kevin Kelly?
Yes.
Commissioner McKeerling?
Yes.
Commissioner Rackison?
Yes.
Commissioner Wishman?
Yes.
Vice Mayor Cater Thompson?
Yes.
Chair Hooper?
Yes.
All vote in favor.
Excellent. Thank you, everybody, for bearing with us for that. And I do want to sincerely thank the applicant team for working with us on this and for hearing the full depth of the commentary that we had and the feedback that we had today. Thank you for your patience. And moving forward, now that we have gone through the third agenda item, we will go to commissioner comment, where I'm sure we will all want very detailed reports. And with that, I'm going to go to Vice Mayor Cater Thompson.
Well, I was on vacation at the Eel River, and it was lovely, and I did 3 Zoom meetings while I was up there. And so I really, I missed my SCTA meeting, so I really don't have any comments except it was a lovely vacation up at the Eel River, getting away from town. I advise people to get away.
Nice. I think that's the best report we've gotten tonight. Thank you. Vice Chair Atkinson, have you had any meetings yet from PBAC?
No meetings yet from PBAC. A lot going on with Tree Committee, but I'll let Roger report it. We haven't had any meetings, but there's been a lot going on.
Thank you for your steadfast commitment to both committees. Commissioner McKerlin, Tree Advisory Committee.
Thank you. Yeah, the Tree Ad Hoc Committee actually has been more active than the Tree Committee, but we're trying to get a little more energy behind the relationship to public works, improving roads, and getting street trees planted or trees planted in some form. So we've got a few ideas that we're further refining. One of them is taking on a street as a prototype and succeeding, and then use that as a reference point for other streets. And I know trees are being discussed everywhere you look nowadays. So, in process.
Thank you. Any other commissioner reports? Okay.
Not I, no.
I just wanted to flag on the August 22nd agenda. I've requested that we add an item to talk about standing and ad hoc committees. Having worked on several other committees and commissions, there are some ways we might be able to adopt a similar structure to get some issues around transparency, communication, and some of our longer standing goals tackled. So if you have any ideas, just please keep that in mind. And then now we'll go to staff comment.
Great. Thank you, Chair, and thank you, Commissioners, for your service this evening. It's greatly appreciated, and we were able to capture all of your comments, and we'll be following up on those with the applicant as well as with the city engineer and public works with matters related to traffic concerns. Regarding upcoming meetings, you can plan on the regular meetings, regular scheduled meetings being held in both August and September. We have a couple, of course, the study session on August 8th that you continued this evening, public hearing on August 22nd, plus the Planning Commission business that Chair Hooper mentioned. Then we go into September, where we do have tentative agenda items on the 12th and the 26th in the form of study session and I believe another public hearing. So anticipate that. I did want to update you on the LabCon status. You did approve the LabCon project earlier this year. That building permit is ready to issue. They have begun site grading and stockpiling, so that project's moving forward rapidly. Also planning, historic preservation specialist Isabel Castellano is completing review of the Scott Ranch landmark designation that was required as part of that project. So that will be coming forward to HCPC in the upcoming months. And then finally, with regard to the housing element, implementation of the housing element is proceeding. There were some items that are deadlined on that housing element approval that do need to move forward. One of those being the development of objective design and development standards. And so you can look forward to that coming to you sooner rather than later. We've been meeting internally to refine some of that work and to establish a timeline to get us through review by the year's end. So that is the Planning Division's report for this evening. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And with that, I believe we are finally adjourned.